main straightaway, and the green flag is out. The Northwestern Bank 400 underway. In 1983, ESPN brought you over 40 races. We're back in 1984 with over 50 more. This is the house that Junior built. It sits in Ronda, North Carolina, just east of North Wilkesboro. And at North Wilkesboro Speedway, he has also built a dynasty. This driver, Darrell Waltrip, is one of his main keys to victory. 1982's Northwestern Bank 400 established Waltrip's short track dominance in Grand National stock car racing with his Mountain Dew Buick. Bobby Allison and Terry Labonte were trying to catch him, but Labonte runs into last year's champion Allison. A bitter disappointment for Labonte. He was in search of his first 1982 NASCAR victory. But it allowed Waltrip to coast to an easy win at North Wilkesboro. His face was beginning to look familiar in the winner's circle. At the fall race at North Wilkesboro, the Mountain Dew Buick once again dominated everyone. As you can see, not a challenger in sight. And speaking of challengers, in the spring of 1983 at North Wilkesboro, Waltrip in his new Pepsi Challenger finds another easy victory. Well, if you don't know who this man is by now, you haven't been paying attention. It's now the fall of 1983 at North Wilkesboro, and you guessed it, it's Darrell Waltrip as the dominance continues. We greet you from the Brushy Mountains in western North Carolina, near North Wilkesboro and North Wilkesboro, North Carolina Motor Speedway, where 31 cars are on the main straightaway lined up for the start of today's Northwestern Bank 400. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins. Welcome to another season of live auto racing here on ESPN. Today, the sixth stop on the Winston Cup Tour for 1984. With me is Benny Parsons, the 1983 Winston Cup, 73 Winston Cup champion, and a winner of the Atlanta race earlier this year. Benny, Darrell Waltrip loves short tracks, and especially here at North Wilkesboro.
I think he loves all of them, Bob, but especially North Wilkesboro. And last week in Bristol, he had a streak very similar to this going. He had won 6 in a row going into that race. Bobby Allison and a couple other cars almost ended that streak at Bristol, but when the checkered flag waved, Darrell Waltrip had won his 7th in a row at Bristol. He's coming here. He has a chance to win 6 in a row. Those same guys are going to be after him. If I was betting, I would not bet against Darrell Waltrip.
Well, let's go down to Larry Newber, who is one of 2 reporters who will be covering the pit area for us today. Larry?
Oh, Bob, outside of row number 2, you continued a streak last week, and you're working on another one this week in terms of consecutive wins at a racetrack. What's the approach to keep that streak going here at North Wilkesboro?
Well, I think the key to our success has been that we finished all those races without any unscheduled pit stops, without any mechanical failures. Same way here. We've run a lot of flawless laps here, a lot of routine laps, and that's what it takes to put wins together, whether you're playing golf or whatever.
Also covering action on pit road for us today will be the editor of Stock Car Racing and Open Wheel magazines, Dick Berggren.
Beginning of this race should really be fun to watch. The last practice yesterday afternoon, the weather was sunny, mild, dry. It's anything but that today. And so the mechanics in the pit areas have changed the cars all around. They've adjusted carburation. Some of them have changed timing. Almost all of them have adjusted the chassis. The drivers haven't had a chance to run the cars under these conditions. So almost everybody is going to be going out here this afternoon with an untried race car. So it ought to be a fun one to keep our eyes on for the first few laps. And back up to you, Bob Jenkins.
The Northwestern Bank 400 is brought to you by Pontiac. Test drive a new Pontiac at your Pontiac dealer, because at Pontiac, we build excitement. And by the Asfor Motor Oil, Pennzoil, protection worth asking for. And by Cooper Tools, the difference between work and workmanship. We'll be back with a look at the starting lineup for today's Northwestern Bank 400 in just a moment. North Carolina in the Raymock Racing Pontiac. And outside of row number 2, car number 11, the Budweiser Chevrolet, Darrell Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee. In the third row, car number 9, driven by Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia, the Coors Ford. And outside of row number 3 in 6th starting position from Hueytown, Alabama, Bobby Allison in car number 22, the Miller High Life Buick. In the fourth row, car number 5, Jeff Bodine from Pleasant Garden, North Carolina in the Northwestern Security Life Chevrolet. And outside of row number 4, car number 44, Terry Labonte from Archdale, North Carolina in the Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet. In row number 5, Joe Ruttman in car number 98 and Dale Earnhardt in number 3. The 6th row, Mike Alexander in 71 and Phil Parsons in 66. The 7th row, Richard Petty in number 43 and Kyle Petty in number 7. The 8th row consists of Tommy Ellis in number 4 and Ron Bouchard in 47. Row number 9, Tim Richmond in 27 and Harry Gann in 33. The 10th row, 97 Dean Combs and 90 Dick Brooks. In the 11th row, car 88 Rusty Wallace and 17 Clark Dwyer. The 12th row, Buddy Arrington in 67 and J.D. McDuffie in car 70. The 13th row, Ronnie Thomas in car 41 and D.K. Ulrich in number 6. The 14th row, Trevor Boys and Jimmy Means. And in row number 15, Greg Sachs in 51, Brent Elliott in 72. All alone in the 16th row, 31st starting position, Tommy Gale in car number 64. D.K. Ulrich in car number 6 moves slowly down the main straightaway just ahead of the rest of the field. He had a problem getting the car started, but apparently is underway right now. Moving through turn number 1, he'll be catching up with the rest of the field as the other 30 cars move in front of us here on the main straightaway. 400 laps around this .625 mile racetrack here at North Wilkesboro. It's a rather interesting racetrack. The turns are banked at about 14 degrees. And what is really important about this racetrack is the fact that there is an incline that you must drive up as you're going to up the backstretch. It's a 5/8 paved oval, 11 degrees decline on the front stretch. You're driving downhill, and an 11-foot incline as you go up the backstretch. The corners, 14 degrees of banking, 50 feet wide. The straightaways are banked at 6 degrees and are 40 feet wide. One of those who has been somewhat of a surprise here this weekend, Dave Marcus in car number 75, who qualified at an average speed of 113.091 miles an hour. Now, the way they do the qualifying here at North Wilkesboro, it's an average of 2 days of qualifying. Dave Marcus did not have a especially good run in the first day of qualifying on Friday, but yesterday he had the second fastest, which moved him up to 3rd starting position. Dave Marcus, originally from Wausau, Wisconsin, now from Avery's Creek, North Carolina, in the Raymac Racing Pontiac. Car number 75, you can see alongside him Darrell Waltrip in car number 11. There's the front row consisting of Ricky Rudd and Neil Bonnet. Bonnet, of course, the teammate to Darrell Waltrip, and perhaps he will be the main challenger of Darrell Waltrip in today's race. Well, the pace car's light is out on top of it. Pace car is expected to be moving into the pit area in just a couple of seconds here, and the field will come around. Looks like the pace car, yes, it does duck into the pit area at the last moment. Here come the 31 starters, and the green flag is out. Ricky Rudd moves out into the lead, followed by Neil Bonnet and Darrell Waltrip in 3rd. Dave Marcus running in 4th position, and 5th is Bobby Allison as they come off the 4th turn, about ready to complete lap number 1. Neil Bonnet looking to the inside of Ricky Rudd coming off of turn number 2. He moves alongside of Rudd as they go into turn number 3 at the end of the backstretch. They're side by side, door handle to door handle in the 3rd and 4th turns on lap number 2. Now as they come out, they bump slightly, and it's a dead heat as they cross the start-finish line and complete lap number 2. Ricky Rudd and Neil Bonnet fighting for the top position. Now Bonnet coming off of turn number 2 down the backstretch, pulls out into the lead just a little bit. About a half a car length advantage on Ricky Rudd into turn 3 and 4 once again. Darrell Waltrip also moving to the inside right behind Neil Bonnet. 3rd lap complete. It's still Neil Bonnet, Ricky Rudd, Darrell Waltrip. Fourth position is Dave Marcus. Fifth is Bobby Allison. Sixth is Bill Elliott. And we have a spin up in turn number 3. Several cars are going to be involved in this one. The track is completely blocked. Among those involved in the accident, Richard Petty, Mike Alexander, Tommy Ellis, Dean Combs. The race to the caution flag, as most of the cars who were involved in that accident have already pulled away. The exception is Dean Combs in car number 97.
Tell you what, Bob, Dean Combs' car looks like it's hurt pretty bad. The front end is bashed in pretty good. He really had no place to go. Mike Alexander had spun to avoid Richard and was sitting. I guess we're going to get a look at it. I did not see it when the... Okay, Alexander and Richard got together going in turn 1, and both of them spins. And the oncoming traffic just has no place to go. Bouchard just almost got in there, right?
So did Tim Richmond.
Phil Parsons, he just got by.
Brother Phil. And look at the contact here between Dean Combs and Mike Alexander. Combs hit him pretty good.
He really did hit him good.
Take a look at it from another angle also. This is the incident up in turn number 2 just a few seconds ago. There are Richard Petty and Mike Alexander spinning and almost blocking the track. You can see the cars going to the inside to avoid, but Dean Combs, with no place to go, hits Mike Alexander on the left side of the car, and there is the wrecker now at the assistance of the Dean Combs car, and Dean is going to be out of this race. That's the Best Products Oldsmobile. Dean Combs, hailing from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, locally here. As a matter of fact, his race shop is located just outside of turn number 4 here, so he does a lot of practicing at this racetrack. There's a good look at Dean Combs, who graduates from the International Sedan Series.
As a matter of fact, his father at one time, Bob, was one of the owners of this speedway.
And so the laps continue to click off. We have completed 5 laps now. The leader at this point is Neil Bonnet, followed by Darrell Waltrip. We'll be right back. Back at North Wilkesboro Motor Speedway, where we are under yellow because of an accident involving several cars, but it looks like this is the only car that's going to be out of the race because of the incident. This is the Best Products Oldsmobile, driven by Dean Combs, 32-year-old from North Wilkesboro. He is in contention for Rookie of the Year, and he was 5th in the standings at this point. Now, Richard Petty was also involved in this incident. Let's go down to Larry Newber and see what he has learned from the Petty pit.
Been in twice. Richard has been in twice while we were away at commercial break. There appears to be that all the damage is superficial. They did not have to get inside the race car. They looked at the tail section, which on the screen you can see is banged up pretty good, but it doesn't look like any of the suspension was seriously damaged. They're just pounding and thrashing, pulling pieces of metal away from the tires and away from the frame. So looks pretty good considering the circumstances.
There's Richard Petty out on the racetrack. You can see the damage, or at least the scuff marks on that race car already. One of the great things about Grand National Racing is the fact that they race on the super speedways, and if they get close to each other, they can be in near disaster. But on the short tracks, they can trade paint and do a lot of bumping and banging out there. Here's Larry Newber.
Sometimes Grand National stock car racing isn't very pretty. Now, of course, we're kidding. Seriously, these are some of the finest prepared and most beautiful race cars in the world. But when you go into a short track, it's a good week to give the body shop a week off. These dents, the tire burns, some other equipment, other drivers, that's a part of Grand National stock car racing on a short track. Characteristics of the short track: fender banging and fender rubbing action. Now, this race car hasn't even been on this racetrack yet, so you can tell they're prepared for it. And something to watch for during the race today is how all these cuts and gouges will grow as the race wears on. If this were next week at Darlington, we'd call this the Darlington Stripe. Seeing how we're here at Wilkesboro, let's call it the Wilkesboro Rub.
And there is Terry Labonte's car on the racetrack. He's running in 7th position at this point. Terry in the Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet. Tim Richmond is in the pit area in car number 27 as we continue to run under yellow here because of the incident up in turns 1 and 2. The crew who had been working on the area up there, putting down the oil dry and cleaning up the debris, has left the area, so it should not be too much longer before we can get back to racing. Pace car leads the field out of turn number 4. We have completed 10 laps. This will complete lap number 11. Here's the way they're running. It's Neil Bonnet in the lead with Darrell Waltrip 2nd, Ricky Rudd is 3rd, Dave Marcus 4th, and Bobby Allison running in 5th place. 6th belongs to Bill Elliott, 7th is Labonte, 8th is Jeff Bodine, 9th is Dale Earnhardt, and 10th is Rutman. And right behind him is Kyle Petty. Drivers are being shown one more lap before green, so we should be back to competition in just a second.
Ron Bouchard and Harry Gandon made some pretty good moves early on in the first few laps. They moved up 4 or 5 spots each. They are regular competitors on the Grand National Circuit and do a good job. So I would look that they would be up competing for the lead before the day is over.
We're going to go back to green on lap number 12 as the pace car moves into the pit area. And Neil Bonnet picks up the pace out of turn number 4. Harold Kinder, the official starter for the Grand National Division, waves the green flag, and we are back in competition.
Neil Bonnet got an excellent jump on that restart. Looks like he anticipated just a little bit better than Darrell and has pulled away to 4 or 5 car advantage right now, Bob.
Waltrip, though, closes in as they move into turns 3 and 4. Bonnet on the lead. Lap number 13. Still about a 4 or 5 car length advantage as the other cars fly by the main grandstand that is packed here this afternoon, despite the fact that we had some rain earlier today, which might have discouraged the race fans from coming out. They are out in force, and this is a sellout here at North Wilkesboro. Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama, in the Budweiser Chevrolet is leading at this point. There is the interval between first, second, and third position as Ricky Rudd continues to run in third, right behind Darrell Waltrip. The rest of the field stringing down the main straightaway now. Good battle in the pack for 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th position, involving Terry Labonte, Bill Elliott, and Jeff Bodine. Terry Labonte moving to the inside of Elliott. Elliott has been running the high line on this racetrack since the race began, as a matter of fact, but Terry Labonte able to pick up the position coming off of turn number 4. And now Jeff Bodine moves around Bill Elliott also. So it is Terry Labonte, Jeff Bodine, and Bill Elliott running in 6th, 7th, and 8th position.
I don't think that Bill wants to be on that high side. I think he basically got caught out there when the car got underneath him and just couldn't get back in line. But he's back in line right now, and I think he's going to try the lower groove for a while.
Jeff Bodine, car number 5, the All-Star Racing Chevrolet, sponsored by Northwestern Security Life Insurance. Now here's a good battle right ahead of Terry Labonte is a good race involving Bobby Allison and Dave Marcus. Marcus driving for the Raymock team this year and has not been doing all that bad this year. As a matter of fact, his best finish was last weekend at Bristol, where he was 4th. Dick Berggren in the pit area has this conversation with Dean Combs, who was involved in that accident just a few laps ago. Dean, are you all right?
Oh, yeah, we're fine. The car was running real good. The car was working, and I think Betty and Mike Alexander and some of them got together. And, they spun, and I just didn't have anywhere to go, and run into Mike.
Unhappy young man. This fellow's garage is right outside the third turn of the racetrack, so at least you don't have too far to take the car.
Oh, yeah, I'm born and raised out here at this way. I want to do good for the hometown, but they do it for their day.
Hometown boy out of it today.
5th, 6th, and 7th position. The battle continues. Labonte right now in 5th. Side by side for 6th place. Jeff Bodine on the high side in car number 5, and Dave Marcus to the inside in number 75. Bodine with the better line in turn number 1 and 2, and he moves ahead of Dave Marcus into 6th position. And also sneaking into the picture is Bill Elliott in car number 9 as he also moves up to challenge Dave Marcus.
Marcus has had some, I don't know, he's got a little bit of a problem. I think his chassis is not quite right, Bob, because he has a lot of cars that passed him on the outside.
Well, the lead continues to be held by Neil Bonnet in 2nd and 3rd positions. Darrell Waltrip and Ricky Rudd. Rudd in car number 15, the Wrangler Jeans Ford. He, of course, involved in that spectacular accident during the Busch Clash down in Daytona. However, he came back to finish 7th in the Daytona 500. He won the next race at Richmond and has been in the top 10 for every race so far this year. A 7th at Rockingham, an 8th at Atlanta, and a 6th at Bristol. We're talking about Ricky Rudd from Chesapeake, Virginia. Running in third position right now behind Darrell Waltrip in car number 11. This is a 400-lap race, so Benny, these drivers aren't going to be in any real hurry to push themselves and run into tire problems early.
No, they aren't, Bob. They're just kind of pacing themselves right now. One car I have been noticing hasn't been pacing himself has been Kyle Petty. He's been passing some good cars with regularity, and he's behind Dale Earnhardt right now and giving Earnhardt all he wants. Kyle Petty looks like he is probably going to have the best run he's had all year.
He's in 10th position right now. He started 14th, so he's already passed 4 cars. Kyle Petty, car number 7, the 711 Ford. There he is moving down the backstretch. The car right behind him is Ron Bouchard and also Joe Ruttman. The car ahead of him is driven by Dale Earnhardt, the number 3. Off of turn number 4 they come once again. Kyle Petty trying to pass Dale Earnhardt and move up into 9th position. He's to the inside of Earnhardt now in turn number 2. They go down the backstretch. Perhaps the horsepower advantage to Dale Earnhardt in this situation, at least down the backstretch. Now the cars move high to pass a lap car. That driven by Brent Elliott from Denton, North Carolina. Brent is in his first Grand National race here this afternoon. He has tried to make 2 other races, but this is his first. And there is Kyle Petty. And now he begins to move to the inside of Earnhardt. The cars touch coming out of turn number 2 down the backstretch. Petty unable to pick up the position, however. Kyle, 23 years old, from Randleman, North Carolina, not too far from here, south of Greensboro, which is about 70 miles to the east of us. There is the leader, Neil Bonnet, as 24 laps of 400 have been completed here at North Wilkesboro. Running in second position is Darrell Waltrip, and third is Ricky Rudd. We'll be back with more of our live coverage on ESPN's Auto Racing 84. Welcome back to North Wilkesboro, where Neil Bonnet continues to lead the Northwestern Bank 400. 35 laps have been completed. Still running in second position, about 5-6 car lengths behind is Bonnet's teammate. That, of course, Darrell Waltrip. Well, it's been a relatively successful season for Neil Bonnet. His best finish at Daytona, but could this be your best finish?
There's no doubt about that. You know, I've been up here before. I've been on the pole for this race several occasions, but I've never been able to win. And most of the time I've chased that car, Junior Johnson's car, around this track like everybody else. And it's a very good feeling to be sitting in one of his race cars up here now.
Does the car feel different to you than other cars you've driven at Wilkesboro? Is the setup different from Junior and everybody else?
Well, Junior's got several things going for him at this racetrack. I've been up here in the last month on 2 different occasions doing a lot of test work. We ran a total of 3 days, probably ran 1,000 miles up here running the car. And one thing Junior's worked with me more so than anything is a particular way to get around this racetrack. Not only can he make that race car go fast chassis-wise, engine combinations, he's a big asset to me in showing me a few tips around this racetrack, and in turn, it's helped me an awful lot.
Neil Bonnet, car number 11. Not only is there a string that Darrell Waltrip would like to continue here, but Junior Johnson is going for his 14th win as a car owner here this afternoon. There is Darrell Waltrip now beginning to be challenged by Ricky Rudd. These 2 cars have been running nose to tail for the last few laps. They approach the slower car of Buddy Arrington and move around it on the back stretch. Bobby Allison also right there in this race for second, third, and fourth position. Allison now to the high side of Buddy Arrington. Also coming out of the turn is Terry Labonte and Jeff Bodine. Those 5 cars running nose to tail, and they have been doing so for the past few laps.
It looks like some of those cars are a little bit quicker than Darrell right now, Bob. Rudd looks to me like if he could get in front of Darrell, he could make a pretty serious move on Neil Bonnet. But Darrell is not having any of that. He's keeping behind him.
Well, Benny, how easy or difficult is it to pass on this racetrack? The turns are banked at 14 degrees, but it would seem that perhaps there's only one groove down there.
Well, there is only one groove. The real fast way around the racetrack, there's only one place. And when a car is in that groove, it becomes very difficult to pass, as Ricky Rudd is finding out right now.
Darrell Waltrip, Ricky Rudd, Bobby Allison, Terry Labonte, and behind Labonte in car number 5 is Jeff Bodine. Cars begin to string out just a little bit. Behind Bodine, Buddy Arrington, a lap car, then Dave Marcus. following Dave Marcus is Kyle Petty. Now Ricky Rudd moves to the outside of Darrell Waltrip and attempts to pass as Neil Bonnet continues to set the pace. Here is side-by-side racing for the second position out in turn number 4. The crowd rises to its feet, cheering their respective drivers, and Ricky Rudd and Darrell Waltrip are side-by-side, and it looks like that lap traffic could play a part in who comes out on top here. They race down the backstretch. They have a slow car in front of them, Mike Alexander, but Rudd accelerates going into the third turn and moves into second position.
Bob, I'm enough of a race fan that I love this. That's great racing. When Darrell Waltrip, when Junior Johnson's car gets passed on the outside of North Wilkesboro, that's pretty exciting.
Well, you know, there was a practice session late yesterday afternoon here at North Wilkesboro after qualifying, and Darrell Waltrip had some serious problems. They had the car up on jacks, they had the hood up, they had the trunk up, they were drinking water out of the radiator, which might indicate that things aren't all they could be for the Darrell Waltrip crew this afternoon. Let's go down to Larry Nuber in the pit area.
Well, Benny and Bob, there's something interesting about Bonnet's performance over the last 5 years. Only 4 drivers have won at least one race in each of the past 5 seasons. There are 3 obvious ones: Allison, Bobby, Waltrip, Yarborough, and the 4th one is Neil Bonnet. Only those 4 have won in each of the past 5 seasons.
There's Neil Bonnet, the leader, with about a 6-car length advantage on Ricky Rudd, but Rudd is closing in, and Rudd has been moving up consistently in the last few laps. In fact, he has opened up the distance between himself and third place Darrell Waltrip now by 10 or 12 car lengths. Bonnet moves around the number 48 car, driven by Trevor Boyce from Calgary, Canada. Ricky Rudd also moves off of the 4th turn and is about to pass Trevor Boyce in turn number 1. Moves to the high side of Boyce.
Bobby Allison has moved underneath Darrell Waltrip and has taken 3rd spot away. Terry Labonte goes with him for 4th spot. Darrell has been kicked all the way back to 5th place right now, Bob.
So this may indicate a problem for Darrell, or it could be that he's just decided to let the car settle down for a while. But anyway, he has lost 3 positions in the last 5 laps or so to Ricky Rudd, Bobby Allison, and Terry Labonte. Do you see a problem out there with Darrell? Is there anything you can notice?
There's nothing that I can really see. I would just somehow the chassis is not exactly right. But Darrell and Junior have been here so many times together that on a caution flag or on a pit stop, they will start adjusting the car, and probably they'll be a challenger before this day's over.
All right, there is Darrell Waltrip, and he running in 6th position right now and holding his own at his best. The leader continues to be Neil Bonnet. Ricky Rudd in 2nd. Bobby Allison is in 3rd position. 4th is Terry Labonte. And in 5th place is the number 11, driven by Darrell Waltrip. We'll be right back. There's Junior Johnson.
Racing. From the inside, no one covers it like auto.
Well, the race fans have brought out the blankets here this afternoon. We have overcast skies, 64 degrees, and it has been raining on and off here earlier this morning. Well, both the Boston Celtics and the Detroit Pistons have clinched a spot in the playoffs, and you'll see them square off live Friday the 13th of this month on ESPN. It could be a preview of the playoffs when the Pistons play the Celtics live Friday, April 13th at 7:20 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:20 Pacific Time. The battle for the lead. Neil Bonnet and Ricky Rudd. Rudd has pulled to as close as the back bumper of Neil Bonnet, but has not been able to take the lead. You can see him pulling close to Bonnet in the turns, but it looks like as they get on the straightaways that Bonnet is able to pull away just slightly. Nevertheless, Ricky Rudd is right there to challenge. Now he goes high, passing the slow car of D.K. Ulrich down the backstretch. Waltrip continuing to fall behind is now back in 7th position as Jeff Bodine has been able to pass Darrell Waltrip. The crew chief on the Neil Bonnet car, of course, is Doug Richard. Let's go down to Larry Nuber.
Doug, are you guys planning on racing with Rudd this early on in the race?
Well, he run real good in practice late yesterday afternoon, and we're planning on racing about 4 or 5 cars. Early part of the race is really hard to determine what it's going to turn out to be later in the race. After a few pit stops and some minor chassis adjustments, we
Richard here at the racetrack. He, of course, was rather severely injured while hit by a car in the pit area at Daytona, but things are going well as far as recovery is concerned for Doug. Ricky Rudd right behind Neil Bonnet down the straightaway once again. The third car there in the line is Greg Sachs in car number 51, a lapped car, not in contention. Rudd looking for the opportunity to set Neil up and go around him, as Neil Bonnet has been leading now for the last several laps. The average speed of the race at this point is 87.890 miles an hour. They're still trying to pick up the pace from a very slow first 5 laps caused by the accident out in turn number 2 that eliminated Dean Combs. Rudd in the Wrangler Jeans Ford, trailing the number 12 Budweiser Chevrolet, driven by Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama. There's Bud Moore watching his driver, Ricky Rudd, out on the racetrack, working the stopwatches and trying to determine exactly what it's going to take to get around Neil Bonnet. Another lapped car being passed is the number 52, driven by Jimmy Means from Huntsville, Alabama, the Broadway Motors Chevrolet.
Ricky Rudd wants the lead, Bob. He wants it bad. But it's so early in the race that he's not going to take a real chance. Here's a real race. Ron Bouchard is got him behind Dave Marcus. He's right on his rear bumper. Kyle Petty has gotten by Marcus and has pulled off to about a 15-car advantage. So those two cars, Bouchard and Petty, extremely strong runs today. Today's the first day for a new sponsor on Bouchard's car, Fast Fare, one of the convenience stores here in the Southeast.
The battle for 8th and 9th position, Dave Marcus in car number 75 and Ron Bouchard in number 47. Slow car in front of them, driven by J.D. McDuffie, number 70. Both cars move high on the racetrack to pass him. Dave Marcus running in 8th place and Ron Bouchard in 9th. We talked earlier about the fact that Dave Marcus finished 4th last weekend at Bristol. Aside from that, he has a 9th place finish at Rockingham and an 11th at Richmond. Finished 42nd in the Daytona 500 and 18th at Atlanta. He is currently 11th in the point standings on the Winston Grand National Tour this year. Has already earned $56,070. Ron Bouchard, on the other hand, his best finish of the year was 3rd last week at Bristol. He has not had another top 10 finish besides that, was 12th in Atlanta, and he currently is rated 12th in the point standings. So we have a battle here on the racetrack for 8th and 9th position among the drivers who hold 11th and 12th place in the standings at this point in the NASCAR season. 70 laps have been completed out of 400, and the battle for the lead really is just about where it was when we left it to go to this battle for 8th and 9th. Ricky Rudd still trying to get by Neil Bonnet.
They just put Dale Earnhardt a lap down. That's unusual for Earnhardt to be lapped this early on in the race, so he has got some pretty serious handling problems. But again, in the pit stops, if they make the adjustments, the car can, in fact, go ahead and win the race later on.
Well, handling is especially difficult on a short racetrack like this. It's not only difficult for the drivers, but it's also difficult for the mechanics who prepare the car and try to get them aligned so that they track just the right way around the racetrack. And ESPN and the National Association of Stock Car Automobile Racing now present a track fact.
Amid all the high sophisticated technology of automobile racing, one of the trick ways of setting up the front end of a car involves the use of a piece of string. They run the string across the back tire here, then they run it up toward the front and measure the amount of toe-in that the car experiences. Turns out this little 10-cent piece of string is the most accurate way to measure toe-in on a Grand National stock car.
Well, we're not quite ready for the checkered flag officially. We still have about 325 laps to go, but right now, Neil Bonnet is the leader at North Wilkesboro.
Ricky Rudd has just taken over the lead of this race, and he's probably going to be looking for these very shortly. While we're on break, his pit crew just went down, picked up 4 brand new tires.
tires, the most important single suspension element on the race car. They aired them up, blew them out. These tires must be somehow or another very special because they had a whole load of pit tires, but they picked these instead. For sure, the first yellow flag that comes out, Ricky Rudd and all the other competitors will be in to take on fresh rubber.
Well, Benny, you and I talked before the broadcast about how important tires are here at this racetrack.
Well, what's happened is that Ricky has been communicating with Bud via the two-way radio, and he has told him basically what the car is doing. Now, they are trying to use the tires. They're trying to use the tire size or stagger, if you will, but they're trying to use the tire size to put the car, to make the car exactly the way Ricky wants it. By the way, we have trouble. Tommy Gale is stalled over in the second corner.
Tommy Gale,
caution flag is now out.
Number 64, the Sonny King Ford, and the second caution period of the afternoon is upon us. Tommy, 49 years old, hailing from
Keysport, Pennsylvania,
or Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, whichever you wish to say. And the race for the yellow is on, and Neil Bonnet will end up in second position as Ricky Rudd beats him to the line, so Rudd maintains that number 1 position. Tommy Gale has gotten going again. He's on the backstretch, going very slowly on the high side. I'm not sure whether he spun or whether the car just stalled on him up there in the first turn.
It looks like the right front fender has some damage, Bob. I'm not really sure, and there is a trail of smoke, so I really don't know. I think possibly he's brushed the wall as he went in turn 1.
It looks like there is some body damage there to the right side of the car. The sheet metal has pushed back into the tire, and looks like the tire is being rubbed considerably.
Yeah.
So Tommy pulls into his pit. Also in the pit area, most of the leaders, including Ricky Rudd in car number 15. Neil Bonnet is in. So is Darrell Waltrip, Dale Earnhardt, Terry Labonte, Jeff Bodine, Dave Marcus, Kyle Petty. Everybody comes in for a pit stop. There are only 4 race cars on the track at this point. Number 72 of Brent Elliott and J.D. McDuffie and Rusty Wallace are still out there, but there are the first 2 positions. Ricky Rudd will win the race out of the pits on this particular stop also.
Boy, what a pit stop. Bud Moore crew, what a fantastic pit stop. They left them all sitting on the jack. Great pit stop by Bud and his crew.
And there goes Bobby Allison out of the pits right alongside Bill Elliott. Also pulling out Dale Earnhardt at car number 3. So everybody now has some fuel in the car, and they have some tires on, or at least everybody. Harry Gant is still in there. Now the jack's going out and he pulls away.
There, he just made it. Skull Bandit almost got caught in the pits.
There's the number 88 driven by Rusty Wallace, another challenger for Rookie of the Year honors. He elected to stay out on the racetrack and come in after everybody else had come in. Dick Brooks pitted right behind Rusty Wallace. Dave Marcus is in for another change of tires right ahead of Rusty Wallace. And Joe Ruttman is in to our right, so is Mike Alexander. As work continues here in the pit area, we are yellow because of Tommy Gale coming in contact with the wall up in turn number 2. Dick Brooks in car number 90, the Chameleon Sunglasses Ford, moves back out onto the racetrack. Pace car is out there, and the leader being shown at this point is still Ricky Rudd. So the standings did not change because of that series of pit stops here. We'll have the traditional 2 abreast restart when we get to that point, and we are just about 1 lap from the green flag again. Well, we'll be back with more of our live coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, where Ricky Rudd still is the leader. 89 laps have been completed, and we are back to racing at North Wilkesboro. Ricky Rudd has the lead on Neil Bonnet. In 3rd position is Terry Labonte. 4th is Dale Earnhardt. The guy that really lost the positions during those series of pit stops was Bobby Allison. He was running 3rd. He's now back to 6th position. Here is the race for the lead, though, involving Ricky Rudd and Neil Bonnet. Bonnet now to the inside on the main straightaway. They go into turn number 1, but Ricky Rudd shuts the door on Neil Bonnet and maintains the lead.
It's amazing just how much a crew can do in the few seconds they spend in the pits, because when we went on the break, Ricky Ricky Rudd had by far the fastest car on the racetrack. It looks like Neil Bonnett's giving him all he wants right now.
Darrell Waltrip is beginning to move up again. He is now up to 4th position. And Bobby Allison and Dale Earnhardt are racing for 5th. There is Waltrip, and right behind him, Bobby Allison in car number 22 and Dale Earnhardt in number 3.
Earnhardt's a lap down, Bob. He did not get going too good early on in the race and lost a lap to the leaders. As well as Richard Petty. Richard Petty is also a lap down to the leaders.
There are Darrell Waltrip and Bobby Allison at the end of the backstretch. Let's go down for an observation from Dick Berggren.
We have some bizarre weather here on the pit road. At the same time, the sun appears to be getting brighter, but it has begun to rain. The rain is not falling so hard as to be able to interfere with the cars, but indeed, it is raining. Now, the event has got to go to at least halfway plus 1 lap before it's an official event, so there's no need for Ricky Rudd to try to run the wheels off the thing at this point. But for sure, up and down pit road, they're beginning to worry about the weather.
As we indicated, it did rain earlier today. In fact, wet the track pretty good, but it was dry at race time. Rusty Wallace, 27-year-old from Greensboro, North Carolina, who is in contention for Rookie of the Year honors in the Gatorade Pontiac, is in the pit area. It doesn't look good. They've got the hood up working on that car. And we're beginning to notice some drops on the front of the glass here in the broadcast booth also. When that track gets even slightly damp, they will, of course, throw the yellow, and the NASCAR officials down below us on the starter stand are looking skyward to see what the weather situation is like. But good racing is going on the track. Jeff Bodine, Bill Elliott, and Ron Bouchard involved in a battle here, along with Harry Gant.
That is good racing. That's excellent racing. Harry Gant looks like he's got the skull banding going after the pit stop he had a moment ago. He spent a lot of time in the pits, but it looks like it was worthwhile.
8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th places right here. Bodine in 8th. Bouchard in 9th. And Rusty Wallace is continuing to sit in the pit area, and work continues on that car. Let's get an explanation again. We go down to Dick Berggren.
They're trying to do several things to Rusty Wallace's car all at the same time. Right now, they're injecting water into the radiator. There would be an engine problem would be the cause of that. They were also working on the ignition system, the distributor. The engine has been silent. It is now fired back up again. Rusty is still in the car. The mechanics are working feverishly on it on several ends of the motor.
Rusty Wallace sitting patiently in the pit area while Ricky Rudd continues to lead the Northwestern Bank 400 with Neil Bonnet running in 2nd place. 3rd is Terry Labonte. 4th, Bobby Allison. 5th is Darrell Waltrip. 6th place is Jeff Bodine. 7th is Kyle Petty. 8th is Ron Bouchard. 9th, Harry Gant. 10th is Bill Elliott. And 11th is Dave Marcus. We mentioned that Rusty Wallace is in contention for Rookie of the Year honors. Now, these drivers accumulate points during the season, but it is up to a decision by officials as to who the Rookie of the Year is at the end of the season. Clark Dwyer and Phil Parsons are tied as far as points are concerned for Rookie of the Year at this time. Greg Saxon, Dean Combs also in contention for the honors. Well, back in 13th, 14th, and 15th positions.
Ruttman's off the pace right now.
Joe Ruttman was right up there in contention with those other two, but he dropped off the pace just as we began to watch that battle in turn number 2, and Joe Ruttman is going very slowly down the main straightaway, definitely off the pace.
I was expecting him to go into the pits that time, but he went by pit road. Evidently, he's trying to figure out what's wrong with the car.
Speculation is perhaps that he dropped a valve in that car. There is Joe Ruttman, formerly from Upland, California, now making his home in the Charlotte area. Be closer to the racing operation. He continues to stay out there on the racetrack, but he is definitely off the pace as he is being lapped by the other cars. Joe Ruttman in the Levi Garrett Chevrolet. Looks like it's only a matter of time before he's going to come into the pit area and have that car checked over. We'll watch him this time to see if he does. Yes, he does head for pit road. Joe Ruttman is in for work on that number 98 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. Here comes Joe slamming on the brakes and coming to a halt in his pit area, and Larry Nuber is right there.
Now, as Joe comes to a stop here in the pit area, a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust headers. The entire crew goes down to the ground, gives the sign to Joe Ruttman that it looks like the day is terminal. He's had a serious malfunction in the engine. At first, they thought they might have had a tire problem. They started bringing in some extra tires. They've run down to the Goodyear tent, wheeling a brand new set down, but it's something very terminal and very serious underneath the hood.
Well, while Joe Ruttman remains in the pit area, Rusty Wallace, who was in, is back out there in competition. The average speed at the end of 100 laps, a quarter of the way through this race, 90.036 miles an hour. Pack running into turn number 1, led by Kyle Petty in car number 7, doing a great job this afternoon. We mentioned that he started in 14th, and he is continuing to move steadily up through the field. And you perhaps are yourself beginning to see the evidence of some rain as a few drops have fallen on our camera lenses. I'm not sure whether it is raining at this time, but it has been sprinkling during the last few laps. And we have a spin up in turn number 4. Tommy Gale has spun once again. The others go to the outside of the racetrack trying to avoid him. That's going to bring out another caution. Another yellow flag flies over North Wilkesboro Speedway. Tommy Gale brings out the 3rd yellow of the day out in turn number 4. I didn't see exactly what happened. I think he just maybe lost it coming off of the 4th turn.
That's what it looks like. I don't see any flat tires or any sheet metal damage to the car.
And the spin came right in front of the leaders of the race, Ricky Rudd and Neil Bonnet, but both of them were able to get by, and they are coming in for more stops.
Let's see if Bud Moore's crew can have that stop like they did the last time. Boy, what a great stop they had the last time.
Bud Moore and the crew going to work. You can see Bud there in the background as he is telling his crew members what tire to put where. Now they move to the left side of the car and replace the rubber there. On the bottom of your screen, the Junior Johnson crew with Neil Bonnet. They also move to the left side of the race car and begin to change the rubber there. But again, a good stop for Ricky Rudd as he is back out on the racetrack while Neil Bonnet continues to sit patiently while his crew finishes up the work. And now they finally get him going. But Darrell Walter beat him out of the pits, as did Bobby Allison and Terry Labonte. So the standings are going to change here because of this pit stop situation, as Joe Ruttman remains in the pit area with some serious problems. So it is Ricky Rudd now in the lead, and unofficially in second position will be Terry Labonte. We'll be back with more racing from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina.
Even I can't always tell.
There are the standings at the end of 115 of 400 laps here in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. The leader, Ricky Rudd. Terry Labonte second. Bobby Allison third. Darrell Waltrip is fourth. And Neil Bonnet is in fifth. Sixth position is Jeff Bodine. Seventh is Kyle Petty. Eighth is Ron Bouchard. Ninth is Harry Gant. And in 10th place is Dick Brooks. Now the battle for the lead is going to be between Ricky Rudd and Terry Labonte, as Labonte is making a challenge here on the main straightaway. Into turn number 1. Still Ricky Rudd maintaining the lead, and Terry Labonte right behind him. Let's go down to the pit area. Here is Larry Nuber.
Now, Bob, one of these days, Joe Ruttman is going to have good luck in a Grand National Stock Car race, but it's not going to be today, is it?
No, Larry, it appears that we cracked a cylinder head. We just get the car around where it's working pretty good. But like you say, this is not our day, so we have to come back Darlington.
Joe, from where you were sitting today, could you get a fix as to who really looked like they had the hot setup today?
Well, it appeared about 4 or 5 cars seemed to be a little bit better. Then there was about 5 or 6 other cars, which I was a group of, so there's approximately 10 cars working real good.
What about the rain? We've had rain for about the last 50 laps. Is it having any effect on the drivers out of the track?
No, just psychological when you see it falling on the windshield. It scares you every once in a while.
Joe Ruttman, Bob, and Benny have to come back another day. Maybe next week in Darlington.
by the way, ESPN will be at Darlington a week from today with live coverage of that race. And Benny, every driver out there on the racetrack is capable of winning a Grand National race. But there are a couple of drivers that you look to when you think, when are they going to win one? One of the drivers, Joe Ruttman, we just talked to. The other is Jeff Bodine. It's just a matter of time, it seems, before Jeff is going to be visiting Victory Lane.
It is just a matter of time. There's no doubt about it. Because his car this year is a brand new team, but they really have done their homework and are doing a great job.
So a motor problem has forced Joe Ruttman out of the race. As you visit the pit area here in North Wilkesboro, the main topic of discussion is cylinder heads. Here is an examination with Dick Berggren.
Cylinder heads have been a topic of conversation in Winston Cup Grand National racing for considerable time now. Until last week, the rules specified that the manufacturer of the block also had to manufacture the cylinder head. All of the cars that are General Motors cars up and down pit road run Chevrolet blocks. Therefore, they have been running Chevrolet cylinder heads. Some of the teams have complained that the Chevrolet cylinder heads have a tendency to crack. Other teams say that the reason those cylinder heads cracked was that the teams who were suffering were simply over-porting them, trying to get more horsepower than the cylinder heads would allow. Well, the teams that were suffering from the cracked heads appealed to NASCAR, asking for an aftermarket head. NASCAR said no, wanting to keep the cost down, wanting to keep the cars running with original equipment. Last week, there was something of a compromise struck when NASCAR said that the Brodix cylinder head, which is manufactured with a Pontiac part number, but which is identical to the Brodix aftermarket cylinder head, would be legalized. That has pleased a lot of teams, including Cliff Stewart's team with the 88 car, that have campaigned most effectively for the new cylinder heads. Here at Wilkesboro, we'll be running with the old cylinder heads, and some of the teams are concerned about the possibility of cracks. It'll be not until July before the new Brodix heads will be allowed in competition, thus giving all the teams an opportunity to fully test and develop their heads. This is a major change in the engine rules.
A major development while Dick Berggren was doing that piece. Bobby Allison has had problems. He is in the garage area. He's pulled behind the pit, and they have the rear end of the car jacked up, and it looks as though he has the rear end broken in the car, and they're changing the third member, which is exactly what put Bobby out of the race last Sunday in Bristol. With 60 laps to go, it put him out of the race again. And I think Dick Berggren is down there with him. Dick?
Benny, your analysis, Benny Parsons, is exactly right. They do have a ring and pinion ready to put in this car. The back end is up in the air. Bobby has just put the car in gear, started it, and run it. That's the way they check to see if something is broken in the rear end. The crew is in the process now of taking the rear axles out. That's step number one for removing the differential. This is going to be a lengthy pit stop, unquestionably. Same problem he suffered last weekend.
Last weekend, Bobby Allison finished 19th at the Bristol 500. He won the Rockingham 500 earlier this year and was 5th at Atlanta. But other than that, it has not been a good year for Bobby Allison. He was 34th at Daytona, 30th at Richmond, and as we said, 19th last weekend at Bristol. He's the defending Winston Cup champion, but things just aren't going his way so far this season. He is currently 10th in the point standings for 1984.
It ranks almost as unbelievable, the problems that Bobby has had this year. He's breaking things that you just don't break on a race car regularly. Sure, you have that problem every 3 or 4 years, but he's having them every week.
On the racetrack, this is the 5th and 6th positions separated by Tim Richmond, who is a lap car. Kyle Petty in number 7 running in 5th place, and Harry Gant in number 33 is running in 6th place. Now, Harry Gant also had some problems during the earlier part of the weekend in qualifying.
He did. He qualified 18th. I talked to Harry yesterday and he said, why did you qualify so poorly? He said, well, the car feels so good that we didn't want to take a chance on hurting it to qualify. He said, I think the car will run about 20-20, and that'll get us in the middle of the pack. You went out to qualify and qualified 20-20. I said, you know, you got to be psychic or something to tell me what you're going to run to the almost to the thousandth of a second.
Harry Gant, who is from Taylorsville, North Carolina. Not too far from here, as a matter of fact. We had dinner at his steakhouse last year when we were here. He right now is being challenged by Ron Bouchard to number 47. Remember, the 27 of Tim Richmond is a lapped car, although it looks like that Tim has straightened out the problems that he had earlier and is staying up there with the 5th, 6th, and 7th place cars. Well, Larry Newber is down in the pit area and has a conversation with Bobby Allison.
Because I got earplugs in.
I'll tell you, it's almost unbelievable comparing 1984 to 1983.
Well, it's one of those things, you know, we're working hard trying to get better and better, and this year we seem to have run through all the bad parts in the racing industry.
Bobby, from where you were racing and you were right up front, from where you were racing and you were right up front, who looks tough for today?
Yeah, good competition today. You know, I thought we'd be able to run good as the race went on, but, you know, with this problem here now, we just...
When you go back out, Bobby, do you go full bore, try and go as quickly as you can, or just try and finish the race?
We'll just go ahead and run to do the best we can.
Bobby Allison, the defending Winston Cup champion, and you know how disappointed he is in the race car, and we appreciate his taking a few minutes out to talk with our Larry Newber. Bobby Allison sits patiently while the crew works on that number 22 Miller High Life Buick. On the racetrack, it is Ricky Rudd leading the event, and it's about almost now a half a straightaway advantage on Terry Labonte, who is running in second place. Third is the number 12 of Neil Bonnet, and running in fourth position as we have completed 138 laps. Running in fourth position at this time is Jeff Bodine. We'll be right back. And I would imagine some hot coffee here this afternoon, as it's rather breezy and cool in North Wilkesboro, as we present live coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400 on Saturday, April 14th on ESPN. Steve Young and the Los Angeles Express host the Memphis Showboats live at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. It's a live USFL showdown Saturday, April the 14th with Jim Simpson on ESPN. 143 laps have been completed. We are closing in on the halfway mark here in North Wilkesboro, and for the last few laps, no raindrops have fallen on us, and Ricky Rudd has continued to lengthen his lead over Terry Labonte. We'll try to get an interval here between the two cars. Meanwhile, two leaders, I should say. Meanwhile, Bobby Allison is pulling back out onto the racetrack. Allison came in with some transmission problems just a few laps ago, but he is back out there in competition. Darrell Waltrip in car number 11, and Darrell is running in 8th position at this point. It looks like this string may end here this afternoon because Darrell has not been especially strong in the first almost half of the race.
He's been astoundingly weak the first half of the race. I really expected a serious challenge from Darrell, but he has not been able to put the combination together today. You know, some days you hit it and some days you don't, and it looks like these are one of these days that Darrell just did not hit it.
Ricky Rudd crosses the start-finish line. Terry Labonte about almost 2 seconds behind Ricky Rudd at this point in second place. Then third is Neil Bonnet, and he has just about a 2-second interval between himself and Terry Labonte. Tim Richmond, we had mentioned coming into the pits earlier and losing the lap, but he is trying desperately to get back on the lead lap. He is really hooked up with that car now. He apparently has the problems fixed that were wrong with it when he came in. Right now, he's moving to the inside of Kyle Petty, who's running in 7th position, but remember, he is not on the same lap. Now Kyle Petty and Jeff Bodine battle for position, as 6th place now belongs to Kyle Petty momentarily, forcing Jeff Bodine back to 7th.
I think that's about 4th spot, Bob. I think that some of those cars in front of them are lapped. I'll tell you what, Kyle Petty has an excellent run going for him today. He just might be, it looks like a Ford day. Ricky Rudd's running extremely strong in his Ford. Kyle Petty in his Ford looks strong.
Kyle Petty's another one of those drivers who will undoubtedly visit victory lane sometime. The question is, how soon is it going to be? His best finish so far this year has been a 17th at Richmond, 40th at Daytona, 31st at Rockingham, 38th at Atlanta, and 26th at Bristol. It looks like that Tim Richmond may be having handling problems because he's running the high crew, but he's fishtailing that car, and it's very loose out there, it would look like, in the corner.
Tell you what, you don't want too much of that because the end result is you're going to be in the wall pretty soon. Of course, if anybody can do it all day, it's Tim Richmond. last Sunday in Bristol, he and Ron Bouchard ran sideways all day. And as a matter of fact, Bouchard was given an award for not crashing.
Tim Richmond is 14th in the point standings at this point in the season. Last year, he was 10th overall. Last year, here in this race, he was 28th, and in the race last fall here in North Wilkesboro, he finished in 10th position. Tim Richmond, formerly from Ashland, Ohio, now making his home in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Richmond also a former Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as a matter of fact, but he decided to give up IndyCar racing, and he is devoting his full time now to Winston Cup Grand National competition.
He seems to have found a home down here. He really enjoys this kind of racing, and he does a great job at it.
Of course, he has won on 3 different occasions in a Winston Cup race. There is the leader, Ricky Rudd, in car number 15. The slow car to the bottom of the racetrack is Greg Sachs from Mattatuck, New York, in the Saxon Sons Chevrolet. He started in 29th position. Ricky Rudd, who started this race on the pole, is in the lead. He took over the lead from Neil Bonnet and has been able to maintain the advantage over second place since that time. He crosses the start-finish line. A couple of laps ago, it was about a 2-second advantage he had over second place Terry Labonte. There is Tommy Gale being lapped on the backstretch once again. He has been responsible for 2 of the 3 yellow flags that have flown over the speedway. He spun out in turn number 2 and then spun in turn 4 a few laps ago. There's the second place car of Terry Labonte, the Piedmont Airline Chevrolet. He goes to the high side of Tommy Gale on the backstretch, but in turn number 4 now, will be completing lap number 159 when he crosses the start-finish line. Here are Dick Brooks and Bill Elliott on the racetrack, battling for 9th and 10th position. Dick Brooks in car number 90, formerly from Porterville, California, now making his home in Albemarle, North Carolina, in the Chameleon Sunglasses Ford. And Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia, in the Coors Melling Ford.
Bill and his people have been very disappointed with their season so far this year. They won the race at Riverside last fall, and they felt like that after they got that first win that everything was going to go their way. But I don't know, they've been running well, but not just well enough. They're 6th, 7th finishes instead of 3rd, 4th finishes like they normally do.
Well, his best finish this year has been a 4th at Richmond, 5th at Daytona, 8th at Rockingham, 11th at Atlanta, and 9th at Bristol. He is 5th in the point standings at this time. You remember he won the final race of the year back in last year at Riverside, California. Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia, 28 years of age. So far this year, he has won $98,270. Bill Elliott now running in 11th position. Right ahead of him, Dick Brooks in car number 90. 162 laps have been completed out of 400 that will make up this race. Tommy Ellis in car number 4 is back into the pit area as we continue to watch this battle on the racetrack. Officially, only 2 cars are out of the race at this point, namely Dean Combs, who crashed early in the event, and then Joe Ruttman. Well, let's visit the pit area where things have been very busy so far today. Here's Dick Berggren.
They sure have been busy down here. And generally when Darrell Waltrip pulls into this pit area with his Grand National stock car, he pulls in as the odds-on favorite. The team tests here a great deal, and they really have this place figured out. But this particular trip to Wilkesboro has not exactly gone their way. Even practice wasn't perfect for Darrell Waltrip this time around. Yesterday afternoon, they had to take their number 1 engine out of the car and put in a backup. Although the crew said that they liked the backup engine even a little bit better. Waltrip, however, right now is running off the pace. Larry Newber, meanwhile, is in the pit area of a guy that's trying hard to catch up with the people who are running in the front. Tim Richmond's pit. Larry?
Dick is running with Tim Brewer, Tim Richmond. Crew chief, what do you guys mean that car in the last pit stop? You look like you might be the fastest on the track right now.
Well, you know, we kind of got a bad start today. We cut down a tire to that first caution flag, but, you know, we're kind of hung back in the traffic right
your lap back yet?
Yeah, we never did go a lap down. We were fortunate enough to cut the tire under the yellow. So, you know, we're just trying to catch up to the leader. He's got about 10 seconds on us right now.
Well, Bob, they've been a little disappointed with their season so far, so this burst of speed midway through the race here at North Wilkesboro is mighty welcome.
You're absolutely right. Tim Richmond was not lapped as we had thought he was. The NASCAR scores indicate to us that he is running in 7th position. So Tim Richmond is moving very well out there on the racetrack. And although we have noticed him with some possible handling problems, he's doing well. The leader is Ricky Rudd in car number 15.
He's just now putting a lap on Dave Marcus, so we speculated at the beginning of the show that this might be a good day for Dave Marcus. He qualified 3rd, but evidently he's got a bit of a handling problem right now, and Rudd has put him a lap down.
93.750 miles an hour is the average speed at the end of 160 laps. Car number 41, driven by Ronnie Thomas from Christiansburg, Virginia. The R.L. Monroe Chevrolet is smoking rather badly, as a matter of fact, down in turn number 1. He and Ron Bouchard and Tim Richmond are running right there together, and Tim looking to the inside to try to get around Ronnie as he may be laying down some liquid on the racetrack.
It looks like he is, Bob. That's a pretty dangerous situation right there. NASCAR has black flagged him. Harold Kenner, the flagman, has waved the black flag, which is a consultation flag. It tells Ronnie to go in the pits and examine the problem and see if he can repair it. If he can't, he'll be out for the day.
Ronnie, 29 years old, started 25th here today. There is Ricky Rudd passing the number 52 of Jimmy Smut Means from Huntsville, Alabama. The black flag once again is being displayed by Ronnie Thomas, as he did not heed it last time around. We'll be back with more of our live coverage from North Wilkesboro. Again, Ricky Rudd is the leader at this point, with Terry Labonte second. We begin another live racing season for you on ESPN today. The 1984 season begins with our coverage here today of the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. We are on lap 178, and the leader is Ricky Rudd with about a 2-second advantage over Terry Labonte. Next Sunday, April 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Time, live, we'll have the Trans-South 500 from Darlington, South Carolina, Darlington International Raceway. It's a racetrack that I've always wanted to visit because of the tremendous history associated with it. And we'll have live coverage of the 500 next Sunday, beginning at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN. And we'd like to remind you also of a new show that debuted last Thursday night. That will be on each Thursday night at 7:30 Eastern Time, Speed Week. Larry Newber and I host the show. It's a review of this activity in auto racing the previous week and a look at what's coming up in the coming week. Join us this Thursday for the second edition of Speed Week. Ricky Rudd, car number 15, the pole sitter for today's race, is out in front. He took over the lead from Neil Bonnet many laps ago and has been leading. We'll go down to Larry Newber now, who's covering the pit area. Larry?
Thanks, Bob. Well, Ronnie, the flight of the independent continues. Looked like you were running competitively, and then what happened?
We got a gear going bad, and I tell you, it's really sickening. We done run 150 laps in the race. We wasn't but 1 lap down, and that's the kind of things I'm looking for, to try to not lose over maybe a lap or 2 during the whole race, and that's what we was doing. But it just don't do you no good when you're sitting in the pits.
Ronnie, by and large, you're going to be happy with the year. You qualified for every race this year. I don't think you've used any free tickets, have you?
No, I'm telling you, we got the potential, and I'm a driver. I'm not bragging, but I can drive a car. If we can get the money, we can show them how it's done. But we've got to get the money, and I've been saying for years, and you know, it's getting to work. It's getting to be real aggravating, and it's real disheartening. I just wish somebody would come through and give us some money.
An anxious Ronnie Thomas. He's ready to get back in even this race.
Benny, I guess that's the magic word in auto racing these days, money, because if you don't have it, you can't buy the number of tires that you need to win a race and put together the combination that you need.
That's exactly right. It takes a tremendous amount of money, and guys like Ronnie and some of the rest of them just simply do not have enough to compete in. It's a shame, but that's the way. That is really the problem today. There's not enough money to go around. Ricky Rudd is looking good. He's going to have enough money after this race is over. He keeps going this way.
He sure is looking strong at this point in the race as we watch out the glass here in front of us and again see raindrops beginning to fall. Rusty Wallace, as we continue to watch Ricky Rudd on the racetrack, Rusty Wallace has pulled into the pits once again, and the hood goes up on that car. Things not looking good at all as far as Rusty Wallace is concerned. Jeff Bodine in car number 5 is running in 9th position here this afternoon. For Jeff Bodine, his best finish of the year has been 6th. He was 8th at Daytona and 9th at Richmond. Now, this is somewhat of a change. Last year he qualified well but didn't do well in the races. This year he is finishing races, and we ask him about that.
Well, for one difference, this is a new car, a new team, Dick, and it's just taken us a little while to learn these cars, Harry Hyde and myself, and to learn how to work together. I think last week at Bristol we showed that we have the potential to run up front. We did until we had a problem with our distributor, but I've learned here in the last 2 years it's more important where you finish than going out there and leading a lot of laps and breaking down. So I think maybe we're trying to save the car a little bit just to ensure that we're going to finish.
Jeff Bodine is 34 years of age, is currently 7th in the point standings for 1984. His best career finish was last year in the Riverside race, the last race of the season. He finished in 2nd place. Bodine, of course, used to make his home in the upstate New York area, now living in Pleasant Garden, North Carolina. There's Dave Marcus in car number 75, and for Dave, he qualified well here today, but has been dropping back steadily in the last few laps.
Looks like he just can't quite get the thing around the corners like he wants it to. Neil Bonnet right now is putting the lap on him as he go down in turn 1, and there's not much Marcus can do except move over and let Bonnet go on by.
Butch Mock and Barbara Hilly, of course, owners of this car, driven by Dave Marcus. Now, he owns a race car also, the number 71, driven by Mike Alexander. So, although he owns a race car, he isn't driving the car that he owns.
I told him, I said, Dave, you're a glutton for punishment. You've got to ride. Why don't you just leave that car parked? But he decided that he wanted to keep on working. He wanted to be active all week. He wanted to work on that thing all week. So he works all week on Mike Alexander's car, comes to the racetrack and drives his own car. Drives for Hilly's car.
There is Trevor Boys in car number 48, rather. Trevor from Calgary, Canada. Had a conversation with him on Friday morning before qualifying, and he is one of those drivers who struggles along through the season with not quite as much money as the other teams, not quite as much as he would like to have. He expressed the opinion if he could get some money and some sponsorship, he could buy the tires necessary to run up with the leaders. His sponsorship here at North Wilkesboro this year is Jim Testa Chevrolet. They have contributed some money to the operation. There's a look at Trevor Boys, and you've competed with him on various racetracks, Ben.
Sure have. I tell you what, he's a pretty doggone good racer. He really is. I think that the boy's going to have a future in this business. And it would be nice to get a Canadian involved in Grand National racing, because those people up there are really interested in racing. Around Ontario and out west, they do some pretty serious racing.
Well, when we were covering a lot of sprint and midget racing back in 1979 and 80, this is one of the drivers who we saw compete regularly at the Indianapolis Speedrome and other places. But he, too, has decided to forego the open cockpit, open wheel racing for the Grand National circuit. Trevor Boys from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Looks like the rain may be falling a little bit harder, at least it is. It's showing up more on our glass here in front of us, but Ricky Rudd is not letting the rain or anything else slow him down. He is setting a tremendous pace out here this afternoon. We are almost halfway through this race. This will complete lap number 198. Just 2 more to go before we reach the halfway point. And as Dick Berggren indicated to us earlier, at the end of 201 laps, it is an official race, and should there be a downpour enough to cancel this event, it would be a complete race.
This is the most problem that Ricky Rudd's had all day. He's run up on Dick Brooks, Bill Elliott, Jeff Bodine, Phil Parsons. He and Brooks get together over in turn 2.
They sure did, and Brooks almost spun, but gathered it in. Ricky Ricky moving to the inside now of Dick Brooks, who is running in the top 10. So Ricky is putting a lap on the 10th position. Look at how close these cars are as they come out of the fourth turn. They actually bump, but everybody stays straight.
Well, Brooks is trying to save that lap, Bob. He really and truly wants to save that lap. Because when he gets a lap down, that just takes any chance of victory away from him. Now he's trying to use Phil Parsons as a pick on Ricky Rudd to keep him back there. He does it. Nice job.
How does it feel watching your brother compete out there?
Well, it's a little bit strange. It really is, but he does a pretty good job. This is his 6th race this year. He's a rookie, one of the Champions Spark Plug rookie challengers, and I think he's doing a pretty good job for just as limited experience as he has.
When you talk about comebacks from accidents, you got to talk about Phil Parsons, because he took one of the nastiest flips that I have ever seen in Grand National racing at Talladega last year, and he didn't let it slow him down very much.
No, he didn't. Fortunately, there hasn't been many wrecks like that in Grand National racing, or there wouldn't be as many Grand National racers as there is. Darrell Waltrip.
Waltrip is into the pits, and we're under green. The crew goes to work on the right side of the car, jacking it up and changing the tires as the other members of the pit crew dump fuel into it at the halfway mark, the halfway point of the race. The average speed, 95.805 miles an hour. We've had 3 yellow periods, one an accident up in turn number 1 involving Dean Combs. Tommy Gale has brought out the other 2 cautions as he spun up in turn number 2 and then in turn number 4. We've been under green most of the time, reminiscent of the race last year when we went almost the distance without a yellow. Now, Ricky Rudd and Dick Brooks have been going at it side by side, and while we were watching the pit stop of Darrell Waltrip, here's what happened. Again, Dick Brooks almost spins, but boy, he does a tremendous job in saving that car. Ricky was able to pass him, and now begins to lap the car running in 9th place, that driven by Jeff Bodine. Here is what is standing at the end of 200 laps. The leader, Ricky Rudd. Terry Labonte is 2nd. 3rd is Neil Bonnet. 4th is Kyle Petty. 5th is Tim Richmond. 6th is Ron Bouchard. 7th is Harry Gant. 8th is Darrell Waltrip. 9th, Jeff Bodine. 10th, Bill Elliott. And in 11th position, Dick Brooks. Ricky Rudd to the inside of Jeff Bodine, the 9th place car, trying to put a lap on him.
Ricky's saying, please let me back.
And the car of Jimmy Means also in here. We'll be back with more of our live coverage after these messages.
No matter how much you prepare, luck seems to always play a major role in an automobile race. Reason for Darrell Waltrip's last pit stop under green? Debris or something damaging this tire. Very simple fact. You put the word cut on it, you take the tire off, and you go back to the drawing board. At the other end of pit road, Dick Berger with yet another story developing during this race.
Well, Kyle Petty may be one of the people who is benefiting by this weather situation we're experiencing, whereas most everybody else changed their chassis as a result of the weather. Yesterday, Petty's car was a little bit loose, so when it got cold, they said, let's not fool with this thing, let's just leave it alone. And he's out there flying with the same chassis he had yesterday afternoon. This is the best run he's had all year, and their crew has to be very, very happy about it.
I'm very impressed with Kyle Petty. He is in 3rd place now. Just a couple of laps ago, he passed Neil Bonnet for the position.
I'm very impressed by Kyle Petty today. This is probably the best run he has since Daytona 500 last year.
Jeff Bodine is in the pits meanwhile in car number 5. Looks like they're going to have to pit under green as it's time for the pit stop. We see no yellows here in the last few laps. Jeff Bodine getting the change of rubber on the right side and going back out onto the racetrack. Bodine beginning to pick up speed down the backstretch. Headed for turn number 3 once again. Jeff running in the top 10 in this race this afternoon. There's Ricky Rudd in car number 15. The speculation is, how soon will it be before he comes it is Ricky Rudd and Bill Elliott running side by side. So these are the standings now at the end of 218 laps. Ricky Rudd, the leader. Terry Labonte in second position. The driver that we've been watching and very impressed with so far this afternoon, Kyle Petty in third, Neil Bonnet in fourth, and Tim Richmond running fifth right now.
You know, I think if Kyle Petty could get hooked up with Ricky Rudd, he could run with him, Bob. I think that Kyle Petty could give Ricky a run for his money today. We need a caution flag to do that. I'm not trying to jinx anybody out there, but...
Father Richard Petty, who has not been in a competitive situation today, has won more Northwestern Bank 400s than any other driver with 10. And some of the other drivers who have won this race, this will jog your memory, Darrell Derringer, Fred Lorenzen, among others.
Remember them well.
I expect that you remember this racetrack when it was dirt, don't you?
I do. As a matter of fact, I was born in this county, about 15 miles from here. I started coming to this racetrack in 1948 or 49, as a matter of fact. In 1958, I came. The racetrack was dirt. There was no retaining wall. Junior Johnson was leading the race and going away. Went in the third turn, spun, and when I looked over there, all I could see sticking out was two front tires sticking up out of the bank. And you know something, Bob? He drove the car up out of there and still won the race.
Junior Johnson won both races here in 1965. He was the fastest qualifier at this racetrack on 6 different occasions. And as I indicated, as a car owner, he is going for his 14th win here this afternoon. But his drivers are not in the first 3 positions at this time, as Darrell Waltrip has dropped off the pace, and Kyle Petty recently passed Neil Bonnet for 3rd position. Ricky Rudd in car number 15, continuing to be the leader.
I've been watching his crew down there. There's no sign of anybody getting excited about making a pit stop anytime in the near future. They're all just standing there watching the car go around the racetrack. .223 laps are complete. Trying to get an interval between first and second position next time, as Terry Labonte is continuing to fall off just a little bit. Well, the crew chief of the Kyle Petty racing operation is standing by in the pits with Larry Newman.
This is Mike Beam. He's on the radio with Kyle Petty, also the crew chief. Mike, you guys got to be excited. 3rd place.
You know, Friday when we got here, we run off the well. You know, we just tried to get it where he felt comfortable in the car. He says right now that he's just out there just holding on, but the clock showing he stays the same. So, you know, we're real pleased.
What is Kyle saying to you on the radio right now?
Me and him, we hadn't said a word since we pitted there last caution. I put a couple rounds of wedge in the car, and I said, well, you know, it's you now.
Bob and Benny, I get the idea we're talking about guarded optimism here in the Kyle Petty pit.
Well, I think that there is reason for that, because he has been outstanding in the first little over half of this race, now in 3rd position. I guess you could see that Kyle Petty has a hot foot on the racetrack here in the Northwestern Bank 400. ESPN and NASCAR present a track fact.
National exhaust systems run directly beneath the driver's feet. In order to keep those drivers from getting a hot foot, Richard Petty and Kyle Petty run a small sheet of aluminum that sits on top of the floorboards. It effectively creates a heat shield, just a dead air space between the floorboards and the feet.
The Northwestern Bank 400 is being brought to you in part by Skull Bandits, for tobacco pleasure without lighting up. It's a pouch instead of a puff. And by Honda Motorcycles. Honda, follow the leader. Live coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. We'll be back in a moment. Ricky Rudd is the leader with Labonte 2nd and Petty 3rd. Jenkins along with Benny Parsons, Larry Newmer, and Dick Bergeron back in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina for the Northwestern Bank 400, the sixth stop on the Winston Cup Tour for 1984. Ricky Rudd is the leader at this point, and we're honored to have joining us in the broadcast booth very famous country music singer, T.G. Shepard, who is also a race fan. How did your involvement in auto racing begin? Or have you been a race fan all your life?
Well, my wife and my son and I got turned on to it at Bristol about 2 years ago. My attorney, Gary Baker, at that time owned part of the Bristol Speedway, the Nashville Speedway. I think the country fan is also a race fan. They go very well together. And when I come to the track, I see a lot of folks that I normally see at a country concert. So I have finally found a sport that I can mix my music with.
How much does your schedule allow you to go to these races?
Quite a bit. I'll make a half a dozen races a year. Of course, I made the Atlanta 500 a few weeks ago, and then this one, and I hope to make Martinsville and maybe Talladega or Daytona. We're in the process of hopefully putting a team together for 85. We've been talking about it to a couple of people.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Benny, congratulations on your win.
Thank you very much.
I sat at home and I was pulling the stuffing out of the armchair. I mean, my wife almost killed me.
You know, that made my day.
Did it make your day?
Atlanta made my day.
No, it's exciting. I'm surprised today that the engines are holding up very well here. I guess it's because of the cool weather. I mean,
yeah, on a hot day here, some of the cars will run extremely hot. Today's a nice, cool day. Very good for the engines.
I was talking to Darrell yesterday before the end of the practice round. Of course, I think his problem today is probably engine because they had to change engines at the last minute on his car.
He had a problem at the last minute. But I tell you, Ricky Rudd's everybody's problem today, TG.
Well, Ricky was on the bus right before the race. He and his sister Carolyn, we were talking, and I asked him how he felt, and he said he felt pretty strong today, so it's showing up.
It really is.
Has about a 6-second lead over Terry Labonte at this point with a little more than 240 laps completed. There is Richard Petty being passed by Ricky Rudd on the main straightaway. Richard Petty running in 12th position at this point. We go back to very early in the race when Richard was one of the many cars involved in an accident up in turn number 1. As you can see, Mike Alexander begins to get sideways and takes Richard Petty with him. And then Dean Combs, with no place to go, high on the racetrack, hits Alexander in the side. Richard was able to get started again and back in competition, but it was an auspicious beginning for Richard Petty. TG, what's going on as far as concerts and that type of thing for you?
Well, I tried to get Clint Eastwood to come out with me today, but he wanted $50 a day plus per diem, and I just told him I couldn't afford it. We have a very busy schedule coming up with the fair season, of course, and it's very difficult for me to be able to work concerts and also racing because we're pretty much like the racing, the driver and the crew and the team. We work on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, pretty much like you people do, and it's very difficult to work both of them in. We're pretty much at home on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday getting ready for the week.
Our problem is we only get paid for Sunday. Friday and Saturday is free. We only get paid for Sunday.
Are you
paid
serious?
For all 3 days.
I thought you got paid all 3 days.
No.
When. Uh-oh.
Oh, Kyle Petty is in the pits.
Petty is in the pits. Kyle running in 3rd place. And the crew is changing tires on the right side of the car. This is a tough break for Kyle. He was looking very strong out there in the 711 Ford. Fuel being dumped in. He's pulling back out onto the racetrack. Kyle Petty back in competition.
He's about a lap and a half down right now.
And he's a lap down to the leader. There is the leader, Ricky Rudd. And look who he is about to put a lap on. Darrell Waltrip.
I think this will be the second lap that Darrell made an unscheduled pit stop just a moment ago, so Darrell is probably at least 2 laps down right now if Ricky does in fact get by him.
And Kyle Petty out on the racetrack right in front of Dale Earnhardt. So they're battling for position now as both of these cars are a lap down because of the pit stop by Kyle Petty. Why would he make such a pit stop? Were the tires just going away so badly that it forced him in?
I would say that he probably needed some fuel. Here comes Bill Elliott in. Here's another Ford coming in the pit, so it looks like that he just probably needed some fuel, Bob.
And Bill Elliott stops that Ford Thunderbird as the crew goes to work on it. The windshield being wiped off and tires being changed on the right side of the car. At the rear end, the fuel is being dumped in. Going to be a quick pit stop for Bill Elliott. He's back out there. But he also goes a lap down now to the leader, Ricky Rudd. Bill Parsons to the outside of Bill Elliott. There's a good look at Bill from Dawsonville, Georgia. Here comes the leader, Ricky Rudd, out of turn number 4, completing lap number 250. So we have 150 laps to go. Is there any particular driver that you root for in a race?
It's very difficult for me because I have a lot of friends in racing, and it's hard to pick just one. I'm the guest today, of course, of the number 5 car. Jeff Bodine invited me up, and the room situation was so difficult in North Wilkesboro, I had to share his room with him last night. My wife's probably home now wondering what's going on, but...
Here's Neil Bonnet, TG. He's been dropping back the last few laps. He's been passed by Ron Bouchard, Harry again, by...
He ran so strong the first part of the race, too. I really thought he was going to hold up well today.
Something's happened to him. He keeps dropping back. He's probably dropped back to 5th or 6th by now.
I really got worried when I come all this way to see a race, and I thought I saw the clouds come in. I saw the raindrops start to fall right before the race, and then it kind of subsided. And then about, I think on a lap about 160, 170, it tried again, and I said, uh-oh. What would have happened if it would have had rain before the 200-mile lap? Would it have been a restart, a postponement, or would we have called it?
No, it would have been a postponement. It would have come back like 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
97.192 miles an hour, the average speed. Let's go down to Dick Bergeron, who can tell us more about the Kyle Petty stop.
Kyle Petty's pit stop was a routine pit stop. His crew chief said they were almost completely out of gas and complained that the car is not getting very good fuel mileage. We've already also seen Bill Elliott in the pit area, and the Bud Moore crew is getting ready to pit Ricky Rudd. This is the beginning of another round of routine pit stops.
There is one of the Junior Johnson cars driven by Neil Bonnet, the number 12 Budweiser Chevrolet. Well, of course, refueling these Grand National cars, just a part of an important pit stop. Here is Dick Bergeron as ESPN and NASCAR present a track back.
Winston Cup Grand National cars have to stop for fuel frequently. They only get 4 to 5 miles to the gallon, and this is the only way that the fuel is allowed to be added, these special dump cans. They hold exactly 11 gallons, and in fact, if somebody is caught with a can that has more than 11 gallons, the can will be confiscated, and a heavy fine will be levied against the team. The very top has a special vent on it that makes sure that none of the fuel spills. There's an air vent over here on the side. These cans are heavy. It takes a rugged man to be able to toss one of these things around.
You got to have a little brawn to be a pit crew member. Those weigh about 90 pounds, and the tires about 75. Our thanks to T.G. Shepard, who stopped up for a few comments in our broadcast booth as we continue to cover the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. The leader is Ricky Rudd with Terry Labonte second and Tim Richmond now third. Outside of the backstretch here at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, as they've come to watch the Northwestern Bank 400 that ESPN is covering live for you today. On Saturday, April 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and 2 p.m. Pacific Time, join us at Pauley Pavilion on the UCLA campus in Los Angeles for a glimpse of the top schoolboy basketball players in the country. It's the 7th annual McDonald's High School All-America Game. Past participants, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, Ralph Sampson, Mark Aguirre. See the top 25 collegiate stars of tomorrow, Saturday, April 14th, when ESPN brings you the McDonald's High School All-America Game. At North Wilkesboro in this 400-lap race, and we've completed 264 laps with 136 to go. Ricky Rudd is the leader. Here he is passing the number 71 car of Mike Alexander. In second position, car number 44, driven by Terry Labonte. The number 47 car of Ron Bouchard is in fourth position. Here is the leader, Ricky Rudd, in the pit area. Fuel being put in. Tires being changed on the right side of the car. The windshield is being wiped off.
The amazing thing is there's no chassis adjustment being made. Just put tires and fuel in it. The chassis must still be okay. He's off.
And there he goes, Ricky Rudd back in competition. competition after an 18.5-second pit stop. And there is Richard Petty going back out onto the racetrack after a stop. Now the question is, when is Terry Labonte, who is now the leader, going to be in? There is Richard Petty in car number 43. Richard involved in the early crash, but able to keep going. Greg Sachs in car number 51 limped into the pit area a few seconds ago with a flat tire on the left side of the car. It's being changed and fuel is being put in. He is 31 years of age, and this is where it all happened. You can see coming out of turn number 2 as he headed down the backstretch, the tire lets go, and Greg did a great job of saving that.
He really did do a good job saving the car. Terry Labonte is coming in the pits.
So our current leader is in, along with Tim Richmond in car number 27. There is Richmond going back out. Terry Labonte is pitted right in front of us here in our broadcast position in the Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet. Patiently, it's a good stop for Terry Labonte. I would say just about the same that Ricky Rudd was in. There's the fast fare Guzzler Buick being driven today by Ron Bouchard, and he was running in 4th place. So now the all top 5 competitors have made their pit stops, namely Rudd, Labonte, Richmond, Bouchard, and Harry Gant. There is Neil Bonnet. And trouble. He runs over. Yeah. He runs over the air hose. That could have been a serious situation.
Boy, it really could. That thing had wrapped around the rear wheels. It's been bad. They will probably black flag in the next time by. I'm speculating, but
might be a stop-and-go situation for Neil Bonnet.
That is a violation.
Jeff Bodine is in for a pit stop, and right behind Jeff Bodine is Dave Marcus. And they're going to change rubber on both sides of the Bodine car. Most have elected just to change on the right side, and Dave Marcus is blocked by Jeff Bodine and has to back up, and now he is pushed out of the pit area. And at the same time, Jeff Bodine finishes his pit stop and blasts back out there in competition.
That's a problem we have at some of the short tracks, the half-mile racetracks. There just is not enough pit room for 30 cars. So what happens is that when 2 cars come in bumper to bumper, the back car basically cannot get out. They got to back up, and sometimes it can cost you a race when you make that last pit stop.
I'd like to remind you that we will be at a larger racetrack next weekend. We'll be in Darlington, South Carolina. Very historic and famous racetrack for live coverage of a 500-mile race at Darlington, the 1.366-mile racetrack. 6 cars.
Excuse me, Bob, but I'm going to be talking to you in a different position next week. I'm going to be in my race car next week. We're going to try to talk to you up in the booth from the racetrack.
Well, I wish you good luck. I know that you would rather be down there in a race car rather than up here, but it's always good to have you join us in the broadcast booth for these races.
Yeah, you're right. I had rather be down here. It's not you personally, but I had rather be down here.
There's a little more money involved, too, I would imagine, if you win the race.
Pays pretty good.
Ricky Rudd continues to lead here. Now, Rudd, as we indicated, was the pole sitter in this race, and should he win this afternoon, he would become the 7th winner from a pole position in the Northwestern Bank 400. He is looking good. That car will run about any place on the racetrack, and it'll run fast anywhere on the racetrack. Larry Newber is down in the pit area with the crew chief on the Ron Bouchard car. Larry?
Bob, I might explain to our viewers watching, David's a little angry right now, not at any individual, but the equipment. The jack malfunctioned on you, didn't it, David?
Well, the jack, the plunger stuck down on the jack, and, the jack quit working, so we had to run back and get another jack. So, we got behind on the pit stop. We got a ways to go. Anything can happen.
You were doing so well for the new sponsor, though. It was pretty exciting, wasn't it?
Well, the race ain't over. We're not giving up yet.
David F. is still hanging in there, Bob and Betty. They still think they can win this one.
Ron Bouchard in 3rd place. And we understand that Ron was given credit for leading a lap, and that's very important as far as the point standings are concerned.
It is worth 5 points, Bob. Each car that leads one lap of the race gets 5 extra bonus points. And I tell you what, when it comes down to the end of the season, those points can be worth a lot of money.
Here's a good look at Ron Bouchard from Pittsburgh, Massachusetts, one of the Yankees that have come to great Grand National Stock Car Racing and doing very well. He is currently 12th in the point standings for Grand National competition. Let's review how the standings are at this point. Darrell Waltrip is the leader with 803. Terry Labonte is second. Dale Earnhardt third. Ricky Rudd fourth. And Bill Elliott fifth in the current Winston Cup point standings. Sixth position is Richard Petty. Then Jeff Bodine and Harry Gant are tied for seventh. Neil Bonnet is ninth, and Bobby Allison 10th in the point standings. We'll be right back at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. Back in North Wilkesboro, Ricky Rudd has a 3.18 second lead on Terry Labonte. There are 5 cars on the lead lap. Third place, Tim Richmond. Fourth is Harry Gant. And fifth is Kyle Petty, and the yellow comes out. There is Jimmy Means in car number 52, who has spun and moved to the inside of the racetrack on the backstretch. This is our 4th yellow flag of the afternoon. And it gives the drivers an opportunity now to come in and to get that fresh rubber they need and make another fuel stop.
What a break that was for Kyle Petty, because he was almost lapped. Ricky Rudd almost had him lapped.
Here come the leaders into the pits again. Rudd, Labonte are in. So is Darrell Walter, Ron Bouchard, Tim Richmond, Neil Bonnet, Dave Marcus, Dale Earnhardt, Bill Elliott, Dick Brooks. All of them are in the pit area. The pace car is on the backstretch, slowing down the field. There is Ricky Rudd waiting patiently, and there is Bill Elliott with the crew working on that car. So with just 112 laps to go as Ricky Rudd and Neil Bonnet go back out onto the racetrack, this probably will be the final stop if we don't have any more yellow.
It will. If the caution doesn't come out, this is it, because now pit stops are very, very important right now, particularly for the 11 and 12 cars of Bonnet and Walter, because they are a lap down, and they need to get in position where they can get that lap back.
Jeff Bodine, Bobby Allison, Harry Gant, Richard Petty, Kyle Petty, all of these drivers now into the pit area. There's the work being done on Richard Petty in the number 43 STP Pontiac. Now the Skoll Bandit, driven by Harry Gant from Taylorsville, North Carolina, also into the pit area. They're going to change rubber on both sides of that car. Kyle Petty also in, and as you indicated, this yellow was a break for him because he was about to get laps, and now be able to make up almost that entire lap. Bobby Allison goes back out of the competition. It's been a tough afternoon for Bobby. Transmission problems plagued him, but he continues to run in competition, although not in the top 10.
Well, he has to make laps. He has to make as many laps as he possibly can, Bob, to get all the Winston Cup points possible. If he had fallen out of the race when he first initially had his trouble, he would have finished 28th, 29th. And as it is, he's going to finish 20th. So we're looking at 27, 30-point advantage by staying out there the rest of the day.
Cars begin to move in a 2 abreast formation as we anticipate a green flag momentarily. Well, we always look for a little bit of humor here at the auto races that we cover for you on ESPN. We asked some of the spectators about who's best looking.
Who is the best looking stock car driver?
Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip, of course. Oh, come on! Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip.
It's got to be the hair. Must be the hair. That's all I can think of.
Who would you have voted for?
Oh, Junior Johnson.
When the green flag came out a couple of laps ago to restart this race, this is what happened. Dave Marcus on the inside of the racetrack, just a little bit out of shape. The rear end gets away from him, and he bumps Ron Bouchard, but he saved it.
He did say, as a matter of fact, he hit Dick Brooks as well. It was almost a 3 or 4 car crash right there.
There is Dave Marcus in car number 75, who started in 3rd position.
You know, Bob, I think that Darrell Walter was right. I think the hair did it, because if I had a lot of hair, I probably would have won.
Well, I'll tell you, Darrell is sporting a bit of a new look this year on the circuit, and apparently the spectators like it. noticed, and you pointed out, Benny, that he did not make a chassis adjustment during that last pit stop. And I don't know whether he was better off to do so or not, but Terry Labonte is closing in and closing in rapidly.
He really is. You know, Labonte did this same thing the last time, but after a few laps, Rudd was able to pull away from him.
On the racetrack, there is a pretty good battle going on, not necessarily for position, but a couple of drivers are out there racing. That is Phil Parsons in the number 66 car and Greg Sachs in number 51. Since this restart, since the green flag has dropped, they've been going at it pretty good out there.
Well, Phil's running a little bit higher line. He probably is searching around trying to find a better way around the racetrack because he probably is 2 or 3 laps down. Not a bad day, really, with no more experience than he's had. Not a bad day at North Wilkesboro.
There's the number 17 car driven by Clark Dwyer from Colorado Springs, Missouri. Now, Clark is another one of those looking for Rookie of the Year honors this year in Grand National Winston Cup competition. He is second in the point standings. We continue to follow this race involving Phil Parsons in 66 and Greg Sachs in car number 51. Greg Sachs is another one of those who has raced in the northeastern portion of the United States and has come down to run Grand National racing. And here is Mike Alexander in car number 71, who has come in for a pit stop. Now, this is the car that's owned by Dave Marcus. So far this year, Mike Alexander, who is 26 years of age, his best finish was 11th on the High Bank 1.5-mile racetrack at Rockingham, North Carolina Motor Speedway. Aside from that, he's finished 21st at Daytona and Richmond, 31st at Atlanta, and 29th at Bristol. Ron Bouchard and Harry Gant seem to have run together all afternoon.
They have run together all afternoon, but Bouchard had that bad pit stop when the jack malfunctioned, and he's a lap down, and Dick Brooks is a lap down. Harry Gant is in the same lap with the leader. Unfortunately, these fellows don't realize that, and he's having trouble getting around Bouchard. Now they're absolutely side by side going in turn 3.
Harry gets the advantage on the inside and passes Ron Bouchard, which Ron looks like may have sneaked up and given him a bump there as he went around. 96.913 miles an hour. That's the average speed at the end of 300 laps. So we're now on lap 305 with 5 cars on the lead lap, namely Ricky Rudd, Terry Labonte, Tim Richmond, Harry Gant, and Kyle Petty. A lap down in 6th. Car number 11, Darrell Waltrip. Then Neil Bonnet. Dick Brooks in 8th. Bill Elliott in 9th. Ron Bouchard in 10th. Down to Larry Newber with an observation on the most recent stop by our leader, Ricky Rudd.
Everything is pretty routine and calm right now. Right now, Bledsoe and Ricky Rudd are having a long conversation on the radio. They have decided that if they do not have any additional caution, they will go the distance with no more pit stops. It's a little close, pretty confident that they've got enough fuel to go the distance. But again, there's another yellow. Watch for him to come in. Other than that, everything's pretty routine and lots of cross fingers.
Well, Rudd now with just about a 5 or 6 car length advantage on the second place, Terry Labonte. Well, we thank you for joining us for our coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400, and we hope you'll be with us for all of our live races this year, including races from NASCAR, from CART, from Formula One, from IHRA, from USAC. We expect a full season of auto racing on ESPN. We'll be right back with more from North Wilkesboro. Welcome back to North Wilkesboro. We take a look at the previous winners of this race, the Northwestern Bank 400. Richard Petty has 10 wins. Darrell Waltrip 3, Cale Yarborough 2, and Bobby Allison 2, and 6 drivers have won the Northwestern Bank 400 one time. There is Darrell Waltrip in car number 11. It looks like his string is broken at this racetrack.
I would think it is broken because he's a lap down and doesn't seem to be gaining on the leader, Ricky Rudd. Darrell Waltrip, over his career, though, has not failed. I was looking last night at some figures, and I could not believe, really, how successful he has been. He has won 58 races and almost $4.5 million. And, you know, that's basically almost as much money as Richard Petty has won. Bobby Allison, Cale Yarborough. You know, the man has just been phenomenal in the short time, I say short time, about the 10 years that he's been doing this.
It has been a phenomenal story of Darrell Waltrip. Here is Dale Earnhardt in 11th position. behind him in number 9. They passed the slower traffic of Buddy Arrington in car number 67 and Mike Alexander in number 71 down the main straightaway into turn number 1. Dale Earnhardt and Bill Elliott fighting for 11th and 12th position. There is Richard Petty in car number 43, who has had his problem since the very early going when he was involved in an accident up in turn number 1 and has been off the pace here this afternoon. But he's still in competition. Right ahead of him is Bobby Allison in car number 22. He has had mechanical problems that forced him into the pits for several laps, but he was able to get back out there and earn as many points as he possibly can toward the Winston Cup and his defending of that cup. Right ahead of Bobby Allison on the racetrack is Jeff Bodine in car number 5, and big things had been hoped for the all-star racing crew here this afternoon, but Bodine also not on the lead lap. As a matter of fact, the last time we had a check from NASCAR scoring, he was 3 laps down to the leaders. Tim Richmond is on the same lap and running 3rd. Earlier we had thought that he lost a lap during an early pit stop, but he did not. And Tim Richmond is running a strong 3rd at this point.
He's running a strong 3rd. You know, he's in the same straightaway with the leader, and we speculated that early on in the race just how much trouble he was having getting through the turns. Well, on their pit stops, they've adjusted. They seem to have the car working pretty good right now.
And Terry Labonte is running in 2nd place, who is 2nd in the point standings at this time and can certainly come closer to the leader, Darrell Waltrip, after this race. The first 3 cars are separated by about a straightaway. Right now, Rudd at the end of the back stretch, Terry Labonte in the middle of it, and the 3rd place car of Tim Richmond at the beginning of the back stretch. And there is Harry Gant, who is also on the lead lap in 4th position at this point in the number 33 Skoal Bandit Chevrolet. Kyle Petty is the only other car, the 5th car, on the lead lap in car number 7. It has been a great afternoon for this young driver from Randleman, North Carolina, in the 711 Ford. Kyle Petty in 5th place.
You know, this, his uncle, Maurice, who has been building engines for Richard for years and years, Bob, had left the Petty Enterprises and was really semi-retired. He came back to build engines for Kyle, and today is his first engine, so it looks like he did a pretty good job.
Looks like it. 7th position belongs to Neil Bonnet, and we have a spin involving Trevor Boys in car number 48. Trevor spins to the inside of the track. However, he is still under power. It looks like he's going to pull back out onto the racetrack, and we will have no yellow. Trevor just spinning down to the inside of the racetrack, and he is picking up the speed going down the backstretch, so we will continue under green here. As Harold Kinder, the official flagman for the NASCAR Grand National Division, is displaying the courtesy flag to several of the drivers, but he does not bring out the caution. Trevor Boys.
Early on in the race, they would have thrown the caution. NASCAR would have thrown the caution flag because there isn't that much to lose. But at this point, a caution flag may cause somebody the victory. So they do not throw the caution flag late on in the race, if at all possible.
And they were certainly right in not doing it then, because Trevor was under power all the time. There's your leader, Ricky Rudd, at North Wilkesboro's Northwestern Bank 400. We'll be right back.
The 6000 STE from Pontiac.
The record for this race, which was set on April 18th of 1971, Richard Petty at 98.479 miles an hour. Now, we're not all that far from that record. At the end of 320 laps, the average speed was 97.442, so we're about a mile an hour off of the track record. Ron Bouchard in car number 47 is on the move. He has passed Neil Bonnet, Dick Brooks, and Bill Elliott in the last few laps and has moved up to 7th position. So
if that not have been for that bad jack on that pit stop, he would be in the same lap with the leaders.
The new sponsorship of Fast Fare Guzzler is doing well here with Ron Bouchard in the cockpit. There is Terry Labonte in the Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet. He is in 2nd position and is not letting Ricky Rudd get out of his sights. It's
But Tim Richmond has got Terry Labonte in his sights.
That's right. Tim Richmond is running in third place, and he is separated from Terry Labonte only by about 3 or 4 car lengths. So this race is far from over. We've got 64 laps to go, and a good 3-car battle still certainly able to shape up here toward the closing stages of this race.
And here again, the Skull Bandit is in the same straightaway with Labonte and Richmond. So, you know, we got a pretty interesting car race for the last 60, 70 laps.
It's been a race, though, that has pretty much been dominated, at least so far, by Ricky Rudd. Now, he has never led by a long distance, but he has still been able to maintain the lead.
Well, the 7-Eleven has an award each and every race. A driver can win, I think it's $3,000 for leading the most laps or the most miles. And there's no doubt that Ricky Rudd is going to take all that money home today.
Again, we're watching second and third position here. Right ahead of them as they move down the straightaway, and Terry Labonte moving to the outside, passing the younger brother of Vinny, Bill Parsons. And Tim Richmond also moving high to the racetrack as they approach turn number 3 to put a lap on Bill. And Richmond on the high side had to get out of the accelerator momentarily, as that's really not the place to run fast here in North Wilkes.
No, you can see there when Phil was underneath him how he just went ahead about a half a car length in the low side in the middle of the corner. The high side of North Wilkesboro is a difficult groove.
Terry Labonte, formerly from Corpus Christi, Texas, now making his home down in the southeastern portion of the United States. The owner of this car, Billy Hagan. And he has won so far during the 1984 season with just 5 races completed out of 30, a little more than $85,000. Last year, he won $362,000 on the entire 30-race event. Terry Labonte has been a contender since he broke into Grand National Racing, and there is Dale Inman, the crew chief on the Terry Labonte car. Terry, 2 years ago, was leading the Winston Cup point standings at the halfway point, and last year he wound up, as far as the points are concerned, in 5th place, and he is currently 2nd in the point standings here in 1984. Dale Earnhardt in car number 3, who has had success so far this season, and Dick Brooks in car number 90 are running together on the racetrack.
Earnhardt has had a tremendous amount of success. Daytona finished 2nd, had a 2nd place finish in Atlanta. Today doesn't look like one of his better days, but all in all, 1984 has been pretty good to Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt is 31 years of age. The owner of this car is Richard Childress. Dale currently 3rd in the point standings.
Bobby Allison's problems continue because he's back in the pits again. Looks like an unscheduled stop.
Jack is up on the left side of that car. They're changing the tires. Bobby Allison has not been a contender here this afternoon since an early problem with transmission forced him to the pit area. And it's been the same story for Darrell Waltrip. Dale Earnhardt and Dick Brooks continue to run together on the racetrack. Trevor Boyes in car number 48 is also right there. Now, we had an opportunity to talk with Dale Earnhardt earlier in the weekend to ask him if it's easier to race when you have more yellow lights.
Biggest thing I caution to do for you is maybe if you got some adjustments to make, you can make them under the caution flag. But if your car's right, I just soon as see go under the green flag all the way.
Well, we have not had a green. The green flag has not waved all during the day today. We've had 4 caution periods. The most serious came very early in the race when an accident up in turn number 1 eliminated Dean Combs. His car was damaged heavily as it came in contact with that driven by Mike Alexander. Dean Combs was not injured in the accident.
Ricky Rudd has managed to put some distance on second place car, Terry Labonte.
So as we get down to the closing laps of this race, the question is, will Ricky Rudd be able to stave off the challenges of Terry Labonte, Tim Richmond, Harry Gantz, and Kyle Petty, the drivers that are on the lead lap with Ricky Rudd?
Earnhardt looks like he's having his trouble with Brooks. There's Junior. He's had his problems today with both his cars.
He really has, and it may show there on his face. It's a face of concern for Junior Johnson. It has not been a particularly good weekend for them at all here today, although Neil Bonnet started in second position in this race and led the first few laps. There is Neil in car number 12. Nevertheless, he has not been a real dominant force in this race. And of course, Darrell Waltrip's problems began yesterday during a practice period. They changed engines after that, and it has not been a good day for Darrell Waltrip. There's the leader, Ricky Rudd, out of turn number 4, completing lap number 353 with 47 more to go. And you're right, Benny, he has opened up almost a straightaway advantage on Terry Labonte. The battle for second place between Tim Richmond and Terry Labonte. That number 75 car of Dave Marcus there is not battling for position with the other two.
I think that's one of the reasons that Rudd has been able to get away from Labonte and Richmond is that they're concerned with each other right now because both of them wants to run second, and as they're concerned about each other, Rudd just simply is driving away.
It could very well be. Labonte and Tim Richmond, second and third in the North Wilkesboro 400. And we invite you to join us for Speed Week, a weekly half-hour program in which Larry Newber and I wrap up what happened in auto racing during the previous week and weekend and preview for you what's coming up this coming week. Join us at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN for Speed Week. The average speed of the race has picked up just a little bit. It's now at 97.851 miles an hour, so we are now less than a mile an hour off of the track record. Well, as you follow Grand National racing throughout the years, you begin to get accustomed to the numbers in addition to the history associated with a particular racetrack. Larry Newber had an opportunity to examine numbers of the past.
Around the world, it seems as though open-wheel drivers have a tendency to change their numbers every year, reflecting their previous year's standings in the point standings. But in stock car racing, the drivers have adopted numbers. It's become a part of the heritage and the tradition. And just looking at the numbers, it's like a walk down memory lane. Take, for instance, the number 11, Darrell Waltrip's, right? But remember all those victories with Cale Yarborough behind the wheel of a number 11? The number 3, another legendary Junior Johnson number. As a matter of fact, that's why Richard Childress uses the number, because Junior was one of his first favorite race drivers. The number 22, a lot of tradition and history there. Fireball Roberts, then Stan Barrett came to Grand National Stock Car Racing. 22 was Burt Reynolds' football number at Florida State University. Now, of course, Bobby Allison. The number 47, Ron Bouchard, right? But remember handsome Jack Smith and all the thrills he gave us? 98, Joe Ruttman. However, Johnny Mance also used that number when he won the very first Southern 500 back in 1950. The number 66, Lake Speed brought that to Grand National Stock Car Racing, but we also remember Larry Frank. 27, another Junior Johnson number. N.C. Anderson had it. And, of course, now Tim Richmond. And how about 7? Well, Kyle Petty is making that number famous for the 7-Eleven stores, but if you squint your eyes real hard, you can almost see the 7A of Bobby Johns racing around the high banks at Daytona. But my favorite number in 1984 is an old legacy from Cotton Owens. Remember the number 6? Well, here's the reason why D.K. Ulrich has 6. Seems as though a few years ago when Tim Richmond came south, the number was destined to be 99. When Richmond left the team, D.K. had a bunch of decals laying around, and he discovered that if you turned the number upside down and took half of that upside down 9, it was number 6. He didn't have to buy new decals, and he inherited the number 6.
D.K. Ulrich is still on the racetrack in competition, and we would like to wish him a happy birthday. D.K. will be celebrating his 40th birthday tomorrow. Enix Staley, the owner of this racetrack, is having a birthday today. So happy birthday to both of those individuals. Well, there were some great names that jog your memory in that piece, Benny.
There was some great names. I like that car, that number 98, because that's the number I used for years and years when I first started racing, and it's always kind of held a special place for me.
I suppose the one that will mean most to you was 72, right?
Probably, yeah. 9 years in Grand National Racing, number 72.
That's right. There's your leader, Ricky Rudd, in the Northwestern Bank 400 from here at North Wilkesboro. As we run down for you the top 5 at this point with 36 laps to go. Terry Labonte is second, Tim Richmond third, Harry Gant fourth, and Kyle Petty is in 5th position. The Trans-South 500 from Darlington, South Carolina, the next race on the schedule, and we'll be there live next Sunday. We'll be back at North Wilkesboro in a moment. What a story as far as the early part of the Grand National season is concerned. Ricky Rudd leading this race has already a victory in his pocket, having won at Richmond, 7th at Daytona, 7th at Rockingham, 8th at Atlanta, and 6th in Bristol. But we have to remember that tremendous crash, and we have a spin back in the backstretch, or actually in turn number 2. It's Phil Parsons. Number 66 of Phil. The inside of the track, now he gets it going again and is moving, but this does bring out a yellow, and the question is, are they going to come in? I'm sure they will, to change tires and get fresh rubber on for the last 26 laps of the race.
Oh, this is Ricky Rudd is dying right now, Bob, because he felt like he had the race in his pocket. Now he's got to come in, put on 4 tires, and they got to get the stagger or the size exactly right, or he's in a lot of trouble.
All right, now it's also going to be interesting as far as the work of the crew chiefs are concerned, because everybody's going to come in at the same time, and it really depends on who gets out first as to where they're going to fall into position on the racetrack. Let's go down to Dick, who's in the Ricky Rudd pit. Dick?
I sure am, and there's a lot of activity going on here. They're preparing for a 4-tire change. Again, no chassis adjustment, but right behind Ricky Rudd is the 44 Labonte. They have already changed the right side tires on Labonte's car, and they adjusted the chassis on the Labonte car. Now, on Rudd's car, they're working to get the left wheels off and put on new tires. These are brand new tires going on the left side, not scuffs. Rudd watching. Rudd keeps out of the pits. Labonte is still in the pits. Here goes Labonte.
Harry Gant wins the race. Harry Gant wins the race out of the pits.
Tim Richmond really beat everybody, and Kyle Petty also got out before Terry Labonte or Ricky Rudd. So this does shuffle the standings, and now Rudd is going to have to work for a win.
But Kyle Petty's coming back in the pits. He probably only changed the 2 tires.
But Harry Gant is going to, or Tim Richmond and Harry Gant both are going to stay out there, so they're going to be first and second, and Rudd is going to be third with Labonte fourth. So this sets up an exciting finish.
It really, because Harry Gant, the Skull Bandit, was really coming on just before this caution flag came out.
May very well have been the fastest car on the racetrack before the yellow, and now we're going to see how things go when the green flag comes out in just a couple of laps. And we'll be back. Richmond is the leader with Harry Gant second, Ricky Rudd third, Terry Labonte fourth, and Kyle Petty fifth. Have 21 laps to go, and Tim Richmond is in the lead. Harry Gant is behind him, although they are separated by Darrell Waltrip, who is several laps down.
Darrell's trying to get one of those laps back. That's one reason he's staying in there.
And Harry Gant looks to the inside now of Darrell Waltrip in turn number 1. He runs side by side with Waltrip, and now makes the pass coming out of turn number 2 onto the backstretch. Let's go down to Larry Newber, who's with Tim Brewer.
Tim, the pit stop did it. You guys came out in the lead.
It's been a long day catching up. We finally got where we want to be, and I guess now it's all up to ready.
Now you did change all 4 tires. Let's look on the fuel you wanted. Did you fill up the tank or you hold back a little bit?
Hey, you know, we just had a good stop. Happened to be lucky enough to beat him on the field.
Right now, is Tim saying anything? Does it look like he has him covered?
No, he ain't said he had him covered. You know, he knows the business. It's tough to beat anybody. You know, we're in a situation right now. You know, 30 laps of
Well, Bob and Benny, the other interesting story is Harry Gant. Remember that Harry Gant decided to not go faster during qualifying because he thought he had the right race set up, and it looks like they made the right decision.
Well, it looks like they may have on the racetrack. Ricky Rudd has dropped another position because there was a lot of traffic going into turn number 1 just 2 laps ago, and Terry Labonte moved to the inside, and there was a lot of traffic trying to squeeze into a single lane there at the end of the straightaway, and you were watching it, Benny.
I really was, and I thought they was. I keep my eyes off of it, and it was unbelievable because I felt like there was going to be a crash down in turn 1.
Here's the way it's set up as they came down the straightaway. Look at Terry Labonte to the inside of Ron Bouchard.
both went in the inside guardrail. Then he touched Bouchard. He runs into Rudd, and they all get him straightened back out.
Amazing.
Great job.
Anyway, Terry Labonte now is in third with Ricky Rudd in fourth place. The lead continues to be held by Tim Richmond. Harry Gant second, Labonte third, and Ricky Rudd is fourth. 14 laps remain out of this 400-lap race.
Harry Gant doesn't seem to be gaining too much on Tim Richmond.
And Ricky Rudd is certainly not letting Terry Labonte get very far ahead of him. Darrell Waltrip is running ahead of these two at the end of the backstretch in turn number 3. But Terry Labonte able to maintain third place at this time. Rudd trying to find an opportunity to get around, but cannot find it at this point. It's been a strong race for Ricky Rudd, but because he got out in fourth place after those pit stops, he has his work cut out for him to pass the 3 cars ahead of him and take home the win here this afternoon.
I really didn't see anything wrong with his pit stop either. I didn't see any unusual trouble that the crew had. Maybe the other team was just a little better.
Well, one thing that you might want to consider is the fact that Tim Richmond's pit is way down at the end of pit road. Does that have anything to do with it?
It is an advantage, particularly, you can come in the pits and you come in a little bit harder, and you don't have such a distance to go when you leave the pits to get back on the racetrack. So you're right, Bob. That's a decided advantage. He's underneath, Rudd is underneath Labonte. He takes a spot coming off the second corner. We don't have it on, but he has taken third spot away.
There is the leader, Tim Richmond, out of turn number 4. Continuing to lead this 400-lap race on the .625-mile high bank North Wilkesboro, North Carolina Speedway. There is Ricky Rudd, and he has been able to pass Terry Labonte to move back into third position. We have less than 10 laps to go. Richmond showing the way in the late stages of this race. It's been an interesting afternoon for Tim. He made an early pit stop, and we had thought that he'd lost a lap, but he did not. As a matter of fact, has been very strong. Approaching slower traffic now on the main straightaway. Mike Alexander in car number 71 moves to the inside and allows Tim Richmond to pass. Here is Ricky Rudd in car number 15. Wrangler Jeans Ford running third. Richmond at the end of the backstretch in turn number 3 once again. He's got clear sailing and clear racetrack ahead of him, at least for the next few laps. Harry Gant about 8 or 10 car lengths behind in second place and has not been able to close that distance in the last 4 or 5 laps.
Victory could be very, very important to both those cars. NASCAR has a program called the Winner's Circle. Neither Tim Richmond nor Harry Gant is on that program, and a win today would put either of them on there. And it's worth about $7,000 a race, Bob. So not only what the race pays today and the prestige it goes with it for them and their sponsors, but the Winner's Circle program, the remainder of the year, probably worth $160,000.
Tim Richmond appears to be on his way to a victory this afternoon. Richmond so far this year's best finish was 5th last weekend at Bristol. He was also 7th in the 400 lapper at Richmond on the short track. On the super speedways this year, it has not been a particularly successful year so far. He was 33rd at Daytona, 27th at Rockingham, and 34th at Atlanta. But you really got to feel sorry for Ricky Rudd, who was so strong throughout most of this race, but when that last yellow flag came out and he made what appeared to be a good pit stop, but just got out behind Richmond and Gant and hasn't been able to close in the distance.
No, the unusual thing is that they have put some distance on Ricky Rudd. The dominance that he's shown all afternoon has vanished here with 20 laps to go.
Tim Richmond off of turn number 4, just past Buddy Arrington in car number 67. Richmond running in turn number 1 now, moving to the low side of the racetrack, now moving high out of turn number 2, going down the backstretch. The car ahead of him is the number 17, driven by Clark Dwyer, who started 22nd in the Hesco exhaust Pontiac. displayed down in turn number 1 again by Dale Earnhardt and Neil Bonnet as they bump.
Well, we talked about the North Wilkesboro rub early on in the show, and we've seen evidence of it, lots of evidence of it. You know, if Richmond goes on and wins this race, he is the 10th different winner in a row, which is a new record. It started with Darrell Waltrip here. No, it started with Richard Petty at Charlotte last year, the Miller 500, and all 10 different races, 10 different winners. That shows what parity we have in NASCAR today.
Richmond takes the white flag. He is 1 lap from victory at North Wilkesboro. D.K. Ulrich is the car that he is passing in turn number 2. Down the backstretch now, half a lap from victory, and it is going to be a victory unless things go wrong in the last half lap for Tim Richmond. Out of turn number 4, onto the main straightaway, Tim Richmond wins the Northwestern Bank 400. Harry Gant finishes 2nd, Ricky Rudd is 3rd, and 4th is Terry Labonte. Look at the crew celebration in the pit area. Tim Brewer and the others are celebrating Tim Richmond's win here today in the old Milwaukee Pontiac. Tim Richmond saluting the crowd as he takes his victory lap. He'll be pulling into the winner's circle victory lane here in North Wilkesboro in just a couple of minutes, and Dick Berggren will be there to talk with him.
Tell you one place there is no joy, that's Ricky Rudd's pit.
That's for sure, and you really got to feel sorry for the Bud Moore crew because Ricky was so strong and throughout most of this race, as a matter of fact. Well, this is the 4th win for Tim Richmond in Winston Cup Grand National competition. His first this year, of course. And there is Darrell Waltrip. And the dominance that he has displayed here at North Wilkesboro is over. He had won the last 5 races, but a 6th victory eludes him. We'll be back to talk with the winner, Tim Richmond, after this. Tim Richmond has won the Northwestern Bank 400 here at North Wilkesboro. Just down the road, about 70 miles to the west of us, is Greensboro, North Carolina. That's where the Greater Greensboro Open Golf Tournament is being held, and we're going to be joining live coverage of that event in just a few moments. Richmond's car is now being weighed by the NASCAR officials, so he has not yet made his way into victory lane. But there is Tim Richmond, who has the helmet off and has a big smile on his face.
Yeah, I know. I'm cracking.
Ashland, Ohio, originally. We'll be getting out of the car here in just a few minutes, and we'll be going down to Larry Hoover. Let's do that right now. Here's Larry.
Tim, you know, victories are always important, but I really had the feeling that a win here today was really important to your team. It's been a rough year.
It was definitely important. I mean, we've had problems, all year this year, and we had problems all week here. You know, we didn't qualify, but we started 17th, and I tell you, the guys worked hard all this past week prior to coming here, and we still aren't right, but I mean, they made adjustments throughout the race, and the crew did it. They put me out first on that last stop, and that gave me the opportunity to drive the race that I wanted to drive.
What'd you do? Threaten them before you came in for that last stop? They were like grease lightning.
No, they know how I come in on my last stop, and it's not as sane as some people would like to see, but and they got me out first. And I want to thank Joe Ruttman. We had his tires on at the end. We ran out of tires, and he loaned his tires to go with. And, it's like
Tim, lots of people waiting for you in victory lane. You got one last comment?
Yeah, like old Milwaukee says, it doesn't get any better than this.
Okay, Tim Richmond's got to get to victory lane. That's win number 4 for this guy, his career, Grand National competition.
It wasn't easy, though, because, again, if it weren't for those last series of pit stops that everybody made when Phil Parsons spun over in turn number 2, it could have been a different outcome. In any case, we'll be back to review and to talk more about this Northwestern Bank 400 here today, which has been won by Tim Richmond. We'll return after these messages.
Hey, Mom and Dad. Hey, what's your here? Beatles, send money.
Back back at North Wilkesboro, and the celebration in Victory Lane going on around the car driven by Tim Richmond, who has won here this afternoon. We review the top 10 for you, and this is, of course, an unofficial finish. Second was Harry Gant. Third, Ricky Rudd. Fourth was Terry Labonte, and fifth was Kyle Petty. Those 5 cars on the lead lap at the drop of the checkered flag. In 6th place was Darrell Waltrip. 7th, Ron Bouchard. 8th, Dale Earnhardt. 9th was Neil Bonnet, and 10th was Bill Elliott. And we'll be back with some final comments, and don't forget to stay tuned for the Greater Greensboro Open coming up in just a moment. We'll be right back here at North Wilkesboro. And so the 6th stop on the Winston Cup Tour for 1984 has come to a conclusion with Tim Richmond in Victory Lane. And now we move on to the faster Darlington racetrack, where we'll have live coverage of the Trans-South 500 next weekend. And Benny Parsons, who joined us in the broadcast booth here this weekend, will be on the racetrack next weekend. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Let's go right now to Larry Newber, who's with Ricky Rudd.
There were times in your career when 3rd place would have been great, but today it hurts bad, doesn't it?
Well, it's a shame to lose a race that way. You know, we dominated things all day. Bud Moore had that Wrangler Ford hooked up all day, and track position just killed us on that last restart. Richmond and Gant just took on 2 tires. We took on 4, and, you know, we gave up track position. And by the time I got by my old teammate, Buddy, and had to knock him out of the way, where the race was over with.
Ricky, you're running up front every week. It's going to feel just great here in 1984.
Well, it is. You know, like I say, it's tough to lose one this way, especially when we run so good. But, you know, Bud and the entire crew did a super job, and, you know, we're going to win our share if the car keeps running like it is. I think we got a few more coming.
Win a share, and you got to consider this guy as a champion prospect for 1984.
And if you look real close, you can still see some blue underneath the eyes of Ricky Rudd, still evidence of that terrible accident down at Daytona. Benny, your final comments.
It was an unbelievable turn of events, Bob. I just could not believe that the turn of events with 20, 30 laps to go. My congratulations to Tim Richmond, because as bad as he was in the middle of the race, and we commented on it, he was all over the racetrack. He persevered. He stayed out there. He worked hard at it. The crew adjusted, and victory was his.
And we'll look for you on the racetrack and hopefully have a radio hookup with you next week at Darlington.
Yes.
Well, the Northwestern Bank 400 is history, as we indicated, and Tim Richmond is the winner of the race. And the Northwestern Bank 400 has been brought to you by Skoal Bandits. For tobacco pleasure without lighting up, it's a pouch instead of a puff. And by TR3 Auto Polish. You want tough? TR3 is tough. Take it from Mr. T. And by race win streak.